Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. There's still some seats down front. I see some of you looking. There's a few seats down toward the front of the chambers here. Good evening. Welcome to the monthly business meeting of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County. Thank you for joining us tonight. At the close of tonight's business, the Mayor and Commission will hold an executive session to discuss acquisition and/or legal, land acquisition and/or legal issues. There are agendas, if you want to follow along with us, just to the right and outside the door on a table, just out beyond the exit doors. And if you're joining us on remotely, you can get an agenda by accessing Athens-ClarkeCounty.com website. If you have cell phones or other devices tonight, please turn them to silent. There'll be 5 opportunities for citizen input. The first is a public hearing on a special assessment district. The second, our consent agenda, items 2 through 10. Then old business items 11 through 13, a public hearing on recommendations from our Planning Commission, which are items 14 through 19, and then one final opportunity at the end of the meeting for anything that's not on tonight's agenda. And I'll let you know as each of these opportunities come up, because I know it's kind of confusing if you don't come every month. Our rules of commission allow citizens 3 minutes for comment. A timer's on Ms. Spratlin's desk, which will turn yellow at 2.5 minutes. So please have your remarks finished before the light turns red at 3 minutes. If you brought handouts you wish to share with us, if you'll hand them to Mr. Berryman, he'll make sure that we get them. Before we start our meeting tonight, we have a presentation. Would Chief of Police Bruce Carlisle, who's the co-chair of Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police and a district representative, if you'd come forward, Chief Carlisle, and also Chief Ira Edwards and Certification Manager Patricia Marks from our Athens-Clarke County Sheriff's Office. And Chief, you can come up. Well, you can come up here so you can be facing the audience so you can see what you're doing.
Honorable Mayor, Commission, it is a true honor to be with you here this evening, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity. This is a tremendous honor, ladies and gentlemen, for Sheriff Edwards and his staff. They have chosen, not been forced to, but chosen voluntarily to join the state certification program of Georgia. My name is Bruce Carlisle. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Livonia. Also, this evening, I'm representing the Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police in the status of the state certification program while I serve as co-chair. I'll tell you a little bit about what state certification is. It's a progressive and time-proven way of helping law enforcement agencies review and improve their overall performances. The foundation of certification lies in the development of standards containing a clear statement of professional objectives. Once those standards are taken and the policies are put into place, those are implemented, and then a team of trained assessors comes in and assesses the agency to ensure that they're doing what they say that they are. That's been done. The review has been sent to the Joint Review Committee and has recommended and approved their certification into the state certification program. A few things, benefits of the state certification program are confirmation that the agency practices are consistent with progressive professional standards, greater operational and administrative effectiveness, enhanced understanding of agency policies and practices, greater public confidence in the agency, recognition in the field of outstanding achievement, and greater governmental and community support. The state certification program began in 1990, but didn't really take a lot of traction until 96, when a lot of agencies came together, and it's grown into the professional organization that it is now. I would say our main goal in state certification is to provide the utmost professional law enforcement services to the citizens and visitors to your community, and Sheriff Edwards has elected to do so. This is only the first step. Sergeant Marks here drives the train. I can assure you, I've been in her seat. It's a team effort, but she puts it all together and makes it happen. In 3 years, we'll be back to visit her again to ensure that the last 3 years that she's done what she's supposed to have done, She has done an admirable job. She's received a plaque from the certification program that's already been presented to her, but I'd be remiss if I did not congratulate you on a tremendous job. Sheriff, your agency is one of 123 out of 650 agencies in the state of Georgia that has elected to be a part of this voluntary program. And on behalf of the state certification program for Georgia, I present you this plaque in recognition of your hard work and dedication for professional law enforcement services. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you, sir. Once again, I would like to say that Sergeant Marks is the wind beneath our wings, so it all goes to her and the other team members that come together, because you cannot spell team with an I. We often say that. So thank you, Chief, for presenting this, and Mayor, thank you for the opportunity, and we'll let you all proceed with your meeting.
Chief Carlisle, thank you for coming over, and congratulations, Sheriff and your staff, for a good job you do.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, sir. Congratulations.
Spell.
That's all right. We,
You good now, Mayor?
Okay. Ms. Bratton, would you call the roll for us, please?
Dickerson.
Here.
Sims.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Wright.
Present.
Bailey.
Present.
Neesmith.
Present.
Dale.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Gertz.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of Tuesday, August 1st, August 8th, August 15th, and August 31st?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have any written communications,
No,
Ms.
we
Bratton? Well, the first order of business tonight is we have a public hearing on on a special capital assessment district, and this is for the Shoal Creek Farm subdivision. Is there anyone that would like to speak to that item? If so, approach the podium. Well, seeing none, we'll come behind the podium. Would you like to open that discussion, Ms. Dickerson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to remind everybody that the Shoal Creek Farms Homeowners Association has been working on this for probably the better part of 10 years when we identified that there was a problem with the pipe that takes the water from the lake and sends it into the creek. 3 years ago, we were notified, we had an engineer come out, and they determined that it was pretty immediate that we address the situation. So the Shoal Creek Farms Homeowners Association met with Transportation and Public Works, and they brought before us several options, and an agreement was made on which option we would pursue. And the Shoal Creek Farms Homeowners Association will be creating this special capital tax assessment district so that we can help pay for that. We'll be paying, the Shoal Creek Farms Homeowners Association will be paying 40% of the cost of it at an amount of $46,000, and the Athens-Clarke County government will be paying the 60% at $73,000. So I would ask for approval of option 1A, B, C, and D.
Second.
Would you read the ordinance for us, Mr. Behrman?
An ordinance with respect to the establishment of a special capital improvement assessment area for a 4-year period throughout the Shoal Creek Farm subdivision for the purpose of providing special assessments against the benefited parcels of land for the cost of repairs within and adjacent to the street right-of-way to repair a portion of the subdivision streets and related infrastructure and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Behrman. Is there any
And-
further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I'm sorry, and there's a corrected copy of the memorandum of agreement at everyone's place. That's the memo that we will be, or the agreement that we'll be approving tonight, not the one that was in your packet.
And we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to citizen input on our consent agenda items. And those are the items that are items number 2 through 10. If anyone would like to speak to one of those, if you'd come to the podium, state your name and address and let us know which item you're speaking to. Anyone wish to speak to 2 through 10? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Does any commissioner wish to take one from the list for discussion? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Bill, I think we have some ordinances.
Yes, ma'am. The first is an ordinance to amend the code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to animal control and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance authorizing the Chief of Police of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia to administer official oaths of office to police officers and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding to the Fire and Emergency Services Department from the University of Georgia for purchase of hazard material response equipment and for other purposes. And the next is an ordinance to amend the FY 2018 annual operating and capital budget for Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, so as to provide funding to the Fire and Emergency Services Department from the University of Georgia for purchase of hazard material response equipment.
Thank you, Mr. Berryman. We have a motion and a second for consent.
I
Yeah.
move.
Have
that we-
have a
that we
motion?
accept the consent agenda.
Okay, have a motion, have a second. Motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? I thought we had motion and second before we had Bill read the ordinances. I'm getting ahead of myself tonight. The next order of business is our old business, which are items 11 through 13. And this is the time for our public input, if anyone would like to speak to us about one of those items. Would anyone like to speak to items 11 through 13? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the we'll come behind the rail. Wake up, Nancy. And we'll start with item number 11, which is the award of Lexington Road Atlanta Highway Corridor Studies contract. Ms. Dickerson, you want to speak to this one?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to ask that this item be tabled for 30 days and ask that you will get staff to arrange a meeting with the Lexington Road Corridor Committee and the Atlanta Highway Corridor Committee to discuss the scope of work.
I'll be happy to do that. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the item's tabled. That's item number 12 is the Barnett Shoals Sanitary Sewer Interceptor and College Station Road Greenway Connector Project. Would anyone like to open discussion on that?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, you called the vote so quickly. Did we want to see if there was any discussion?
Is there any,
I don't really have any, but you called it very quickly, so.
well, y'all got to learn to be on your toes tonight, I'm in a hurry.
So I missed the vote, is the thing, so.
I know. Are you approved? Okay,
I vote
great.
to approve, sorry.
Thank you. I'll make sure you get an opportunity to discuss next time. Item number 13 is 1072 Baxter Street, which is a pedestrian crossing. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to move that we table this and ask staff to come back in a few months down the line and come up with several different locations where we might consider a more appropriate place for the crosswalk. I understand there's some objection from some folks on the other side of the street, and we've got some construction going on down the street that might make for a more appropriate place. So I think it would probably be best to just step back and wait to see that pan out.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
No. I want to ask a question.
Sure.
Mr. Manager, where are we on this? Last thing I saw was an email talking about another recommended spot and waiting a while till the Kroger fuel station was built before we move forward with it.
Yes, sir. We did send out, the staff did take a quick look at the corridor, and the Kroger fuel station that's under construction now seemed to make the most sense from a safety perspective, from staff's recommendation, as something that we could act on. That we can model that a little bit further if you'd like, give you some more detail. But I'm not sure, holding up this particular agenda item doesn't have to, you don't have to do that in order to get some feedback on the other as well.
I'm going to second that because I think it's important for us to keep it on the front burner so that we can make sure that it keeps on everybody's mind. So that's why I would like to second it, because I could see that spot. And I know staff did send us back something about, I think it was Columbus. Was it Columbus? And actually, I think what we were talking about at the agenda setting was Paris, that bus stop there at Paris Street. So at any rate, I'm going to second the motion so that we can make sure it stays fresh on our minds.
Have a motion, seconds. Any further discussion?
I don't think we
90
need.
days, allow staff some time to evaluate. Do you think they need more than that?
Well, can't we put 90 days and bring it back sooner if need be?
I think the mayor was on to something right there. I mean, we can bring it back sooner, but I think 90 days is appropriate. I think we did want to model some of the traffic that might be occurring on that road and look a little bit further at what the impact of the Kroger fuel station will be. So it could be 90 or less.
Is that acceptable to you?
Yes,
All right.
ma'am, it is.
Okay.
Just a
Yes,
point
ma'am.
of clarification, so the crosswalk is going to stay as is
For now.
at the, where it currently is, a little bit more study up and down the road from there.
Any further discussion?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we're getting to our zoning items, and these are items 14 through 19. And we deal with these items one at a time. We have public input on the item, then we come behind the rail and discuss it and take action on it. And there's a little bit of difference in the public input. There are 10-minute segments, but you have to have signed up for those in advance. And the first one, item number 14, is the request for Williams and Associates for Billy Ray Thomas to rezone from RS 15 to commercial neighborhood property at 195 Kirkwood Drive, and the proposed use is a bank. And John Williams has the 10-minute slot.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is John Williams with Williams and Associates. We are here today representing Mr. Billy Ray Thomas and the Commercial Bank. The Commercial Bank is a 93-year-old community bank. It's always been on the outskirts in and around Athens. As the name implies, the bank is primarily commercial in nature, or they do have some general public clientele. Approximately 3 years ago, the bank opened an office across the street from the proposed site at the terraces, but now finds it's time to move to a more permanent home and has a strong desire to stay within the boundaries of Athens-Clarke County. The property owner, Mr. Thomas, purchased his property in 1982, well before the expansion of the Epps Parkway. In the last 35 years, he's seen the property and the landscape change dramatically around his home, and now he finds himself in a difficult situation. For nearly 10 years, Mr. Ray has tried to sell his property, but has been unsuccessful. In 2008, a far more aggressive plan for a bank was proposed for this parcel, which was ultimately unsuccessful. In that staff report by your staff at Athens-Clarke County Planning Department, they said what remains to be determined is whether or not this gateway corner will continue to be addressed by a vacant lot or developed with single-family housing under the existing zoning, or possibly a proposed bank. We know from time past, the last 10 years, this property is not going to be developed as single-family housing. It's not appropriate for single-family housing in this area, given that in the last decade, the trips per day through that intersection exceeds nearly 25,000 trips a day, or 25,000 cars a day. It's also clear that there's very little interest in anyone purchasing the property for the existing house to use it as a home either. I know there's been some mention of study in the corridor. 2008, a zoning request was brought before you to zone this property as a bank. Ultimately, it was withdrawn for lack of support from this commission. Why wasn't the corridor study began at that time? I think you guys asked staff how long that study may take. That study could take a year and a half or 2 years. We have a viable, existing community bank that is willing to locate within the boundary of Athens-Clarke County today, not 2 years from now. They want to be here today, and they've spent an inordinate amount of time and money to try to accommodate the ordinances of the community that they desire to see in this area, and I believe that we've done that. So now Mr. Thomas finds himself, if this project does not get approved tonight, somewhat a victim of the change in landscape that he didn't determine. He didn't decide the road should be where it is. You know, the planners that designed Epps Parkway, the city, the community put that road there. They're the ones that changed the landscape of this corridor. That changed, that ship sailed when that road was put in. I mean, this corridor ultimately, eventually will develop in some sort of light commercial office type usage, is my belief. It's not going to be 5 single-family residential homes fronting on Epps Parkway, or fronting on Timothy Road or Epps Parkway with 20,000 trips a day going past their house. That's unrealistic to think that that's going to happen in this situation. As far as the appropriateness of our plan, we've made some changes to improve it. We've eliminated, the bank's done basically everything that was asked of them through staff and through public comment. We've eliminated the drive-up ATM. We've added intersection improvements at our expense that were already considered and going to be done by your Public Works Department. So again, if the bank is approved, we pay for the intersection improvements at Timothy Road. If the bank is denied, you guys and the taxpayers pay for those improvements because they're already planned to be done right now. We've improved the geometry of the access at Kirkwood Drive. I know there's been some issues with not wanting us to use that access point. However, it's just simply not an option to get a left in at the existing driveway location on Timothy, and it's unsafe. The access to Kirkwood will actually eliminate trips along Kirkwood. It'll keep people from cutting through and trying to come in a back door if we did it as a right-in, right-out only at that frontage. We've increased the buffers on the site as well. Finally, we got some staff comments before the Planning Commission and some comments we've heard from you guys and other residents about the size and the scale of the building. This building is much smaller than the building across the street from a footprint standpoint. It's exactly the same height from a height standpoint from finished ground. Yes, the terraces sit down a little bit. Yes, we sit up a little bit. We went to the bank, again, at the request of some of you and some of the neighbors, and the bank has agreed to spend a lot of money to lower this site by 4 feet. We can drop this site by 4 feet. We are looking at the same type of building, the same building height as you have across the street. It is not a scale difference. It is not a building mass difference. We are smaller if you look at us, on top of our plan versus what's across the street. Addition to that, there was an issue staff had with us not being on transit. I know I spoke personally with Butch, and he agrees that transit routes added, this is a great location to add it. At that time, and now we've committed to adding a bus stop location along Epps Bridge Parkway to accommodate that route. And there's been some talk about, other properties zoned in the area. Well, I mean, those properties have to be available for sale at a price that works for our client. They have to be for sale at a size that works for our client, or the number of parking that works for our client. We can't dictate, the free market from a standpoint of who buys what, who goes where. The commercial bank would like to go on this corner. They're not in the development business. They don't want to buy up all the property around there. They want to develop a beautiful gateway bank, a gateway structure coming into Athens-Clarke County on this corner. And that's the property that's available, and that's the property that was for sale at that time. Finally, and this is the part that's probably the most difficult for me, and I'm sure it's difficult for you guys as well, and I understand that there's been a lot of talk about, and maybe this goes back to why we talk about a study, there's been a lot of talk about, well, if we zone this piece of property, I mean, what about the property that's catty corner across the street? What about the property that's on the other corner where the church is? I mean, that simply cannot come into play for a zoning decision on this parcel. You have a future land use map that we're in compliance with. We're not asking for any variances and any waivers. If another piece of property brings something in across the street, that's not Mr. Thomas's issue. He shouldn't bear the burden of what may happen, what somebody may do in the future. Let's deal with Mr. Thomas. Let's deal with his case. Let's deal with this great-looking bank, this great-looking structure, this great-looking business that wants to stay and continue to reside in Athens-Clarke County, and who we all know it will be a great asset to the community in the corridor. Let's don't think about what may happen in the future by those other parcels, because you have a future land use map that dictates what's going to happen on that. You have the ability as commissioners to not rezone that property across the street. So I would ask that you not consider that in this rezone request, that you only consider our request, our compliance with the future land use map, our compliance with the codes and ordinances to not necessitate any variances at all with this request. And in summary, I would just ask that you take those points into consideration and know that our client has worked for the last 6 months. We've tabled this issue on at least one occasion. We've worked with staff, we've met with staff, we've met with you guys, we've met with the neighborhoods. We've tried to accommodate all the trees that need to be saved on there, all the buffers that people have requested. Stormwater management's not an issue. Access is the best it can possibly be designed for any use on this corner, even residential use getting in and out, for the points of ingress and egress that we've accommodated here. There's just simply not a reason not to consider this as an appropriate use and a gateway project for our corridor, for this corridor that has long since, we all know, has long since been primed and ready for some development of this type in the area. So let's take advantage of having a great community partner in the community bank and allow them to go on this corner. And finally, And guys, I apologize. You've seen me for 20 years doing this. You know I have to do this, but just because it's a requirement. But Mr. Thomas does assert that the denial of this rezone request amounts to an unconstitutional deprivation of the property and arbitrary taking of the property without just compensation under the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Georgia, and further, the denial of this request violates the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution of the United States. Just preserving Mr. Thomas's right, I hope you'll consider what I said to you tonight. I hope you'll consider the fact that this is a fantastic opportunity for Athens-Clarke County to get exactly the type of business that we talk about keeping in an area, in our community, exactly the type of business that wants to partner with the community to offer up its bordering when it's not being used to community events and to neighborhood meetings that will give back in all cases through taxes and just general gratitude to the community. So I appreciate your consideration in this matter. Hope you'll take that into account when you vote on this tonight and approve this project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We have there's also a 10-minute opposition for opponents to the project, and we have 2 people that have signed up to share the 10 minutes. Philip Burns will have the first 5 minutes, and then Elizabeth Hughes will have the second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Philip Burns. I live at 180 Kirkwood Drive. I'm semi-retired after 15 years in the IT department at St. Mary's. Kirkwood Drive abuts the back of the proposed commercial bank at the corner that we're discussing tonight. A surprising number of Kirkwood residents have lived here most of their adult lives, and several have moved into homes that their parents have built. 7 of the 8 homes most affected are owner-occupied, contrary to a report that we heard that said that they were mostly rentals. Just wanted to make that clear. And most of us owners are retired. Stable home values, of course, are critical. Commercial development can certainly affect that. More than that, we have the pleasure of living on one of the hidden gems of Athens streets, a quiet, shady lane with 1 street light, 10 minutes from everywhere and really goes nowhere. And it's remarkably quiet in spite of all the busy streets that surround it. The Planning Commission staff report brought to light some major concerns that I'd like to expand upon. And by the way, that staff report recommended denial of this petition. Stormwater drainage. We already have stormwater issues on the low side of Kirkwood, where we live, with 3 or 4 days of flooding every year in both front yard and backyard due to the runoff from the intersection and subdivision across Timothy. I included pictures of this in the email I sent you last week. I hope you had a chance to see that. They also show our flooded screen porch. More blacktop across the street will certainly add to this problem. I've had streets and drainage engineer come out to inspect the runoff area, and he could only recommend that keeping the gully clear of undergrowth is what we need to do, because the city county, of course, is not responsible for stormwater drainage past the right-of-way. If additional runoff comes from almost it looks like an acre of new blacktop just up the hill from us, our home may regularly be inundated and become unsaleable. I foresee thousands of dollars spent on creating a mini Grand Canyon in our backyards to contain the runoff. The report also mentions the likelihood of additional rezoning requests in the area and refers to the currently commercial listed property diagonally across the intersection that was just mentioned. There are 2 nice brick duplexes just north of this plot on Epps Bridge, and a single family home just north of that, which are all rentals. But if you allow this development, how can you justifiably refuse any future requests for rezoning when a developer dangles hundreds of thousands of dollars in front of the owners? Combine this with the house on Kirkwood at 145 Kirkwood that is currently listed as a commercial property, and the whole corner could become Dollar Generals and gas stations. that would certainly be more than, and there would certainly be no more 150-year-old oak trees left on it. That begins to encroach on Telfair subdivision, just north of that, and fronted by nice old homes and duplexes on Epps Bridge, whose owner might, and I'm certainly not denying anybody's right to sell their property and to profit from it to whatever extent, but I think that the effect on the rest of the neighborhood and the whole strip will be dramatic. And that relates to a third item highlighted in the staff report. And this is the idea of a comprehensive plan that was raised just now as well, that has not been made for that whole area. The area right across the street that was referenced to the terraces building and the condos that surround it were, as I understand, presented, the only reason it was approved was it was presented as a comprehensive plan for the whole block. The claim that the site in question is not suitable for residential purposes is contradicted by the successful development, again, across the street, which includes far more office space and, I guess, 35 townhomes in an attractively integrated unit, all subject to similar noise and congestion as this side of the street. And by the way, there is properly zoned property on the other side of Epps Bridge, which looks like it would accommodate a building like this one, and it's still available, and it's ready to build on. One concern not mentioned in the report,
Mr. Burns, you can finish, but it'll go into the next part of the other person's.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor and Commission, my name is Elizabeth Hughes and I live at 180 Kirkwood Drive. I retired from the university 18 months ago. Like most of the residents of my old neighborhood, I'm on a fixed income and I expected to live there the rest of my life. We first fought rezoning of 195 Kirkwood in 2009. That property has never been up for sale as residential since I purchased my house 11 years ago. And this request from rezoning is in fact much more than one lot and one bank. This is a whole neighborhood to consider, and it's not fair on longtime residents to have their properties devalued by rezoning without a comprehensive plan. Kirkwood Drive is currently has a no through road designation. It will become a cut through for traffic trying to avoid the light at Epps Bridge and Timothy. The intersection of Epps Bridge and Timothy, one of the busiest and most dangerous in Athens-Clarke, is currently very difficult. When you leave Kirkwood to try and turn left on Timothy, it's very difficult to do so. And the proposed right-only exit from Kirkwood will render this impossible. We're not quite sure how we're supposed to get down the other way on Kirkwood, on Timothy Road. At certain times of the day, traffic on Timothy is at a standstill. Extra traffic from increased development along Epps Bridge and Timothy, including the proposed development of Swanson Jones Estates, if that's approved, that could be another 160 cars or something. This will have a very detrimental impact on parents trying to drop off and pick up children on from Timothy Road Elementary. So, we request a comprehensive plan, as you've heard before. Before granting any rezoning, there needs to be a comprehensive study done like you proposed to do on the Atlanta Highway again and on Lexington Road. And if you're going to develop Epps Bridge as a successful economic corridor, then it can't just be done one lot at a time, higgledy-piggledy businesses. There needs to be a whole plan in place. So this really benefits Athens-Clarke County and not just sort of one or two people who have sold their lots. As you know, of course, both the Planning Department and the Planning Commission had very good reasons for recommending against the project. Traffic, stormwater, and grading all need to be solved first, as well as definitely having a plan. I'm sorry, I'm not as well prepared as I hoped. I have 3 families in Houston, and 2 of them had to be rescued by the National Guard, and 1 has lost everything. And I just haven't slept, so I'm sorry. That's all I have.
You did fine, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wishes to speak to this may now, but you'll be limited to the 3 minutes. Does anyone wish to speak to this item?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Commission members. My name is Walter Smith. I live at 310 St. Ives Way in the St. Ives subdivision, which is just down the street 100 yards or so from the intersection of Elps and Timothy Road. I would like to voice my opposition to the bank project at Kirkwood Drive and Timothy Road. In so doing, I strongly support the ACC planning staff and planning commission in their recommendations to deny this project. First, the proposal will not improve the Kirkwood neighborhood in any way. Instead, it will essentially destroy it. Between the increased traffic on Kirkwood and the overpowering 2-story, out-of-scale building in relation to the residents that are around it, the proposal would diminish property values of all of the adjacent residents. Second, there's really no need for a community bank at the proposed location. There are plenty areas in West Athens that are more appropriate and already zoned for commercial development. Therefore, why would we want to allow the negative impact the proposed development would have on the Kirkwood neighborhood? The proposed entrance on Timothy Road will create a potential traffic problem for vehicles attempting to turn right off or left off of Ebbs Bridge Parkway due to the close proximity of the intersection of Timothy and Epps Bridge. If you've ever been there, you'll know what a problem that is. Finally, my biggest concern, which has been expressed earlier, is that this development would lead to additional commercial development along Timothy Road and Elps Bridge, and this is highly undesirable for our neighborhood. In closing, I strongly urge you to deny this project, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to voice my opposition to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
My name is Barbara Dean, and I'm going to read the correspondence from Jane Sullivan, the president of the St. Ives Homeowners Association. This was written, I believe, earlier today or yesterday, so a few of the things would not be appropriate, but I'm just going to read the letter that she gave to us. And I believe this letter was sent to the commission, but I'm not positive. It says that it was sent. I'm writing to urge you to vote against the zoning request for the corner of Epps Bridge Parkway and Timothy Road, property of Billy Ray Thomas. While I respect Mr. Thomas's right to sell his property, I feel that to change the zoning from RS-15 to CN will have negative consequences for our community. Number one, when the zoning was done in the early 2000s, this corridor of Epps Bridge Parkway was to remain residential until you reached Highway 78 by way of Timothy, or after the curve, as 316 merges into it. Homes had been purchased based on this information, and homeowners have put money into improving their homes, believing it to remain residential. To change the zoning for that corner will grossly impact the small neighborhood located on Kirkwood Road and the residents who have lived there for multiple generations. Number 3, to allow this zoning change then opens the door for more requests of the same, namely the lot located diagonally. This will impact our neighborhood of St. Ives as our homes back up to that property. As for the actual plans for the commercial bank, she has several concerns. The neighborhood shares these. This bank in general is geared toward commercial matters and will not serve the majority of the neighborhood. Number 2, the grading, the tree loss, and the parking lot will impact the current homes nearby, and the overall height of the building will tower over the area in an awkward fashion due to the topography. Number 3, the paved parking lot will increase stormwater runoff for the area into adjacent roads and neighborhoods. Lastly, there does not seem to be adequate pre-planning regarding the traffic flow. Number 1, the proposed access by way of Timothy Road within a merge lane is a red flag as a safety issue. Number 2, there is no conceivable way to make a left turn off of Kirkwood onto Timothy to get to Epps if you have to cross traffic plus those exiting right into Timothy from the parking lot. Number 3, there are also plans to develop 85 homes behind Swanson Jones that will also be funneled out into this already heavily congested area. The current development across the street from the property is mixed use, but with a strong residential component. To simply plop a standalone bank down on the corner of a neighborhood street is incongruous with the look of the surrounding area. As a representative for those living in the St. Ives neighborhood, I ask that you please follow the Planning Commission's recommendation and deny this request. Jane Sullivan.
Thank you, Ms. Dean. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Yeah, come on forward.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Parker Adams. I'm the owner-occupant of 140 Kirkwood Drive. While I'm here tonight to echo the opposition that my neighbors have to this rezoning, I want to offer my own take on it as well. So, Boswell Group touts this as the Timothy Road redevelopment, and on their online advertisement, they say that this is there's the opportunity for assembling adjoining and adjacent properties. So while they say they're only interested in these two properties, I guess in the redeveloper's eyes, they're really more interested in a larger commercial tract. So there's zero doubt in my mind that if these two properties are rezoned to commercial, that the rest of the residential properties will fall like dominoes. The entire block will go from residential to commercial, and these eight single-family homes, will no longer be in the Athens landscape. Most of these homes are 60s and 70s ranch homes, median home priced. I purchased my home actually earlier this summer with the knowledge that this property on the corner could be redeveloped. These homes are between a half acre and an acre, so they're not the cookie cutter houses that are going up. They have enough room in the front yard to throw a ball around, enough room in the backyard to hide Easter eggs. They're great single family starter homes, for myself at least. Timothy Road Elementary is right down the road. You can walk your children to it. It's one of the best elementary schools in Athens. That's why people, they get moved out of school district for Timothy Road. If these properties turn to commercial, these 8 properties are no longer here. And 8 properties in the grand scheme of things in Athens, not a whole lot. I looked on Zillow this morning. It may not be the most reputable source, but it's the best publicly available thing I have. For median priced homes in Athens, so between $130,000 and $160,000. For homes that have at least a half acre of land, there's fewer than 20 out there. That's not a lot of selection for single families, hoping to move to Athens with a decent sized yard. I grew up on a dirt road. I had plenty of land. I moved back to Athens because I love the city. I knew I wasn't going to get a dirt road, but other families who are in a similar situation where they want to have enough room for their children to play in the yard, they deserve to have that. So I'll end on this note. I may be a new resident to Kirkwood Drive. The good gentleman spoke of Mr. Thomas being a victim of the changing landscape. The residents on Kirkwood Drive who have been there for decades, they should not be victims of the changing landscape for the Kirkwood block. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Does someone else want to speak to this item? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, everyone. My name's Kenneth Wood. I've lived across from Thomas's. We own the property there at Timothy Road. Been there pretty much all my life. I'm not going to tell my age, but it's been a long time. When I was younger, I could ride a bicycle from Timothy Road all the way to where Home Depot is and never see a car. The landscape has definitely changed, and that's why I hate to tell these people about the neighborhood they want to protect. There is no neighborhood anymore. It has definitely changed. When the road was widened, they took a big part of our front yard, and it changed. I mean, you ask anyone who knows anything about that corner, and they're telling you who in their right mind would want to live in that area. I've moved back there, and I can tell you, you wouldn't want to live there. It's not suitable for residents. The traffic noise is loud. I just don't see any other thing that it could be for residential. It's not very suitable for that. I pay a lot of taxes in Clarke County. The taxes there on that property is about $7,000 a year. I have a business on Baxter that I pay about $8,000 a year in taxes. And I'm tired of seeing businesses go to Oconee County. I'd like to know over the years, why is all this gone to Oconee? Clarke County, we need the tax money here because as a business owner, we share a burden of the whole county. And it'd be nice to have businesses to stay in Clarke County and develop. Now, I understand, I respect people who live in Kirkwood, but I'm telling you, times change. It's growing, and you're not going to stop it. That corridor is not suitable for residential, therefore I think it should pass. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Anyone else wish to speak to this item?
Good evening. I'm Andy Thomas. I live at 140 Cherokee Ridge. For full disclosure, I'm the COO of the commercial bank, but I'm also an Athens-Clarke County resident. In fact, I consider myself a Clarke County guy. I've lived in Clarke County since I was 7 years old. I go to Beach Haven Baptist Church, been going there since I was 5. Went to Clarke Central, graduated from there, met my wife at Clarke Central. My son went to Clarke Central, played football there. He's now a state trooper. He still lives in Clarke County. We own a rental house in Clarke County. We're Clarke County folks. So when the bank wanted to look at expanding their footprint, we wanted to put our toe in the water in Clarke County. We have been successful. We are not a Dollar General, as some people have indicated tonight. That's not who we are. We are civic-minded. We give back to the community. Our Winterville branch will prove that. You can talk to the mayor in Winterville. They will all attest to that. I second that this corridor is changing. And although I hate that, it may, people that live on Kirkwood may see it as an imposition on them, I can see the back of the mall from my house. So I know what it's like to have something like that across the street. At Christmas time, sometimes it takes me 3 light cycles to get out of my own neighborhood. It's just the way that it is sometimes. And as a member of senior management, some people have said tonight, hey, there's some other parcels there. There are not other parcels there that the commercial bank can consider. They're not. I appreciate y'all trying to tell us how we can run our business. They're not acceptable. So this isn't in a threatening way, but our plan B and C are across the line in Oconee County. 2 miles down the road, but they're across the line. We will be yet another business that will leave this county and go to Oconee County and take the 7 jobs that we've already created in Clarke County, take them with us, and the 3 or 4, once we get open, that we will add, they will also go into Oconee County. And as a resident, I want to know from you guys, what are you going to do to stop the bleeding? I'll leave it to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
My name's Jay Boswell. I live at 1060 Woodhull Lane. I just want to echo a couple things that John Williams brought to your attention. By lowering the site an additional 4 feet, as Williams and Associates discussed, the bank is absolutely compatible with the area when you look at the height of the office buildings across Ipswich Parkway. And also consider that, under the current zoning, a single-family residence can be built 30 feet high on the property with the existing grades, it'd be higher than the proposed building. Also, we're going to bring up, we've heard some stuff about spot zoning. What exactly is spot zoning? Nowhere in the planning staff's report for this rezone is spot zoning mentioned, but it has been brought up. There are different definitions used throughout the planning community, but most agree that 2 conditions must be met for spot zoning to occur. First, it must be a change in zoning applicable to a small area, and second, it must be a change in zoning which is out of harmony with comprehensive planning for the community. The use does conform to the future development map, as stated in the planning staff report, and banks traditionally have minimal impact on adjacent residential properties, which is also stated in the planning staff's report. These facts, along with the adjustment of the height of the building, make a strong case that the zoning does conform to the comprehensive planning for the community and should not be considered spot zoning. Also, I would like to mention there are additional properties for sale in this neighborhood. May or may not be commercial. I certainly don't think we're going to see a Dollar General or anything of that nature. I see professional, commercial office opportunities in this area, nothing else. I appreciate your time, and I hope you'll approve this rezone tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. Anyone else want to speak to item number 14?
I'm B.R. Thomas. I live at 195 Kirkwood Drive. Now, I also own the lot on the Ipswich Road, which is the corner lot. I've been living there 54 years. When I first moved there, everything was pretty quiet. I was out in the country, really. And over the years, it just increased more each year. And we just had a traffic thing for Timothy Road this last week. I would say the traffic, it was at least 15 to 20% more than it was last year. And what's going to happen in the next year? So I understand this bank has got it's a commercial bank. They don't even have a drive-through. I guess all they do is all this new computer stuff. They don't have to have people coming in. So we have this guy said something about water. I worked for construction 60 years. I'm still working. I'm 83 years old. And I don't, talking about water situation, we got what we call detention pond. Don't matter how much it rains or how much falls, the same amount go out in a uniform form, which is no flooding. So, like I say, I've been doing construction for 60 years, and that somebody was complaining about the height of the building. You go in any subdivision or any new house that's being built today, it's at least 2 stories, and they probably got a basement. But if they don't even, if not a 2-story building, they at least got what we call it, a bonus room upstairs. 2 stories, any way you look at it. So I don't think the appearance of the bank is going to be it's going to be something that looks good, but something for the people that's coming through Clarke County. It's better looking than those duplexes and rental property we got all up and down the road there. So now my last comment is, I guess, in the last 12 or 15 years, I've had about 15 people try to approach me, started off with, and then I finally put it in real estate because I didn't have time to mess with it. I was still working. So what I'm trying to say is, out of all the places, all the businesses that have come to Clarke County, wanting to spend their money and wanting to stay in Clarke County, all we has got so far is rejection. I don't understand. I thought this country or this county should be wanting to progress. Something besides, like I say, everywhere you come in Clarke County, you're coming through a low rent section. Why don't we want something that look and be proud of? And Elk Bridge Parkway is nothing but a commercial thing. I don't know what the commissioners, what their future plans are, but it's gonna go commercial. Why not?
Mr. Thomas, your time's
That'd be
up. Thank
fine.
you.
I appreciate your time.
Does anyone else wish to speak to item 14?
I live at 255 Pendleton Drive in Athens. Everyone knows what an emotional issue this is, but if we step back and look at the options available, no one that is not emotionally involved believes there's a better use for this property. What we know, this is no longer a viable lot for residential use. The development across the Elks Bridge show how compatible residential and office can be. There will be no traffic impact to the neighborhood. Basically, that's one car for every 30 minutes. The bank is not open at night or on weekends. You all are elected to serve the people of Clarke County and make decisions that are in the best interest of all the citizens of Clarke County. I don't believe there's any way you can justify that the proposed use is not a reasonable and practicable use of this tract of land and would serve the best interest of all Clarke County citizens. To deny this request would be a decision based on motion, not fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. Anyone else on item 14? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. And I believe this is Mr. Hamby's district. Would you like to open the discussion? Can I get Bill to read the ordinance so I won't forget that? Would you read the ordinance, and we'll go to discussion?
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, with respect to rezoning 2 parcels of land comprising 1.635 acres located at 556 Epps Parkway and 195 Kirkwood Drive from RS-15 single-family residential to CN commercial neighborhood with condition and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Beerman. Mr. Hamby.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'm going to try to bring up a couple of points about this, specifically about the building itself, about the impact, not necessarily on the building, but what the rezoning will entail for the whole area and for the neighborhood and for this corridor. And I'm also going to probably talk about. There may be some emotions in it, so I'll try to avoid that. But you know how it is when you represent people who care about their property. It is emotional, and I don't want to discount that. So I know some of the statements that we heard tonight is one of them was this works for our client. This is something that works for our client, and I can appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate people that do work for their client and help them make the best product possible. And I would say to that though that what I'm trying to do is also work for my clients, for the people that I represent in Kirkwood and St. Ives and Swanson Jones and Mansfield, some other areas that are concerned about this. And they're concerned about it for valid reasons, I believe, that aren't necessarily emotional. The valid reasons being, as pointed out by our planning commission, that opening the door to this opens the door to other lots that could go commercial. And it was stated that we decide that, and we do decide that, and we could decide that right now too. But I will point out that at the first planning commission meeting, what did happen and what was brought up was the fact that there's already commercial across the street to justify this rezoning, and we know how that works. I mean, it's just human nature to do that. You rezone this, and the next person that comes up that wants to rezone another parcel along here will point to this rezone as justification for wanting to do it. And that's fine. I get that. I also get that at some point this may be commercial. But what I'm suggesting that we do, and y'all heard me say this at the agenda setting session, is let's do it right. Let's make sure that the neighborhoods are protected. Let's engage the neighborhoods in this to make sure to make sure that it is not spot zoning. Spot zoning isn't mentioned in the planning report, but what is mentioned is piecemeal. And that in essence is spot zoning. Commissioner Kidman brought that up on the Planning Commission. So doing a study will allow us to make sure that it happens right from the get-go. We've come a long way in our land planning. Our staff has looked at issues over the years and have developed us over the years. If we're going to go down the path that we're being asked to do to piecemeal or spot zone this, then we're doing the same thing that we're trying to fix on Atlanta Highway and Lexington Road. We just did an RFP, or we're putting it on hold to make sure that we get that fixed. And we're doing that. There's some comparisons that got brought up to Oconee County. And I will say this, we got an email, I think this is good news, from our manager this week about the sales tax receipts for our county, for our community, for the month of July being up 10% over last year. And Oconee County's grew too, it grew at 4%, and that's good. I'm glad for Oconee County to do that. But I would also say this in comparison to Oconee County, and I'm not going to dwell on Oconee County, but their planning commission has also gotten very careful about rezoning single family into commercial areas. So if you're gonna, if that's out there, then I would assume that they're probably going, if that's an option for them, a commercial area. But there's also options right across the street in our community for commercial too, that's already zoned commercial. And I understand that they need to do what works for the client, and I get that. So the thing to look at in Atlanta Highway is, in this one, if we go this direction, we'd be creating a new corridor. And we want to do it the right way. And this corridor would compete with Atlanta Highway, which is something we're trying to fix right now, and spending a lot of money trying to do it, because we have come a long way in land planning. We recognize that the way Atlanta Highway developed may have been right at the time, but there's better ways to do it now. And that's what I'm asking us to look at there. See, I'm gonna make sure I make all my points, but several people got up and spoke about the impact on Kirkwood. And this is, the thing I think that I would hope we pay attention to, of course, is the neighborhood protection. I think that's a big issue for all of us. And I wonder if we're paying attention to that when we have commercial activity that empties onto a residential street. And y'all have been down Epsbridge and you've been down Timothy. What'll happen is people will see that Timothy's backed up. They'll cut through Kirkwood and go that direction. And it just, and then if you open the door for more commercial activity on there, that feeds into the situation even more. There is that self-fulfilling prophecy that we're doing to ourselves by saying, well, it's already commercial. It's already commercial. So, but it isn't. And it's up to us as the elected representatives for this community to make sure it's done right. From that standpoint.
Mike, I'm sorry to cut you off because you've had your 5 minutes, but we'll come back to you again after other folks have talked.
Okay, I need to get to the emotional part.
Well, I thought you would give you a minute to catch your breath. Melissa?
I don't think this is a bad plan. I really don't. I mean, and I truly understand how, single-family use on that busy corner on that 4-lane highway is not really feasible anymore. But I hear the concerns of the residents. You have this narrow little hairpin curved street. People bought their homes to live these quiet suburban lives. And I feel like their concerns should be prioritized. And yeah, we need a plan. I mean, we've got to quit just willy-nilly rezoning stuff without a plan, without sitting down and having the conversation with the people who live there and the people that own properties in the surrounding area about what their vision is for the future of their community. Commercial creep is a real thing. It sounds like there are already properties on the market that are insinuating that they might want to come up for a rezone in the future as well. We need a transitional zoning category that can provide a kind of, buffer zone between commercial and single family. And we went down that road. We started to talk about it a few years ago with the Prince Avenue plan. They created a zoning category that could have been applied throughout the county, and that whole thing just got thrown out and never revisited. So I hope that we can revisit that. We are in the middle of our comp planning process. Now is the time to have that discussion. Whether it's a clear zoning plan for this corridor or even a policy by which, when rezonings are requested in certain areas, there is a mandate that these developers sit down in a clear process with the community to help decide what the best way forward is for some of these properties that are in growing parts of our community. I live a block off Prince Avenue, which is a major commercial corridor that probably sees as much, if not more, traffic than Epps Bridge. It doesn't have to be a bad thing to live near commercial property, but ideally it should be, commercial uses that the neighborhood could enjoy. A bank is a fairly non-intense use, and this is not a, it's a commercial bank, so it's not going to be a lot of in and out. But the building does loom over what's already there. I mean, maybe with a little redirection, and redesign of the building and, different placement. The driveway certainly bothers me. The fact that there is a driveway on Kirkwood, even though it is a left turn out only and it doesn't direct the traffic into Kirkwood. I just feel like, we've got to get it together. We've got to get it together and have a plan and have a policy about how we address these situations where we're getting our commercial intrusion into our neighborhoods or abutting our neighborhoods, or even where our commercial areas are growing and we're talking about upzoning. I mean, we've just got to realize that growth is inevitable, but it has to be done in a really nuanced way, and the people of this community deserve to be a part of that conversation, and it needs to be a very deliberate conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Bell.
I've studied this, I've gone back over it and over it and over it, and I know I'm going to have a lot of comments from different areas, not only of my family, but of the community, but I still am going to defend our business of Athens-Clarke County. And my mind keeps going back to studying. I've looked, I've reviewed the size of this, I've reviewed the height of the building, which I did mention earlier, but I know that's going to be modified some. I agree with the fact that if a residential home went there, if it's a two-story, it's going to be somewhere in that same ballpark. The main part that I go back to, and yes, I agree, we can do a study, but what else could we study to decide to put on this property that could be better than a commercial bank that will have low, the way that you will use that bank will not be as a drive-through, it will be to go park your car and go do your business and come back. Yes, you will exit to the left onto Timothy Road from Kirkwood, but my mind still goes back to my first question. What will wind up being there if we wait for another opportunity? Mr. Thomas deserves a chance to have this as a sale for himself, but I feel like our Athens-Clarke County, it will break my heart if I see this go across the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Anyone else wish to speak to it?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'll get that in a minute.
It's an enormously difficult proposal in front of us, given these sort of layered concerns that we've heard, concerns about retaining business and concerns about neighborhood protection and, the very real circumstance that people found themselves in who've been there over 30 or 40 or 50 years, who really were completely on the edge of the small metropolitan area that is the greater Athens-Clarke County area, and now are sort of deep within it. With Highway 316 coming in. And I find a lot to look at favorably with this proposal. I mean, as Commissioner Bell mentioned, it is a low-scale use. It's a 9-to-5 kind of use. You don't have cheap Chinese plastic. There are no dancing girls. There's not a lighted canopy. No gas fumes, no food waste. I mean, those are all good things about this. And I really could see this bank being sort of a great cornerstone of this corner. The flip side of that is that, as we look just in the third page of the packet in front of us, I mean, the neighborhood really was designed as a residential neighborhood with property lines that were dramatically varying. This wasn't, I think somebody mentioned, this wasn't a sort of cookie cutter neighborhood that was laid out with sort of very clean lines and geometric spacing from parcel to parcel. So as a result, I think the applicant's agent has worked very hard to make ingress and egress work as well as it could work. But it's only as well as it could work using these two specific parcels. And one of the things that certainly has maybe tipped the balance in these last couple of days were through correspondence with the neighbors, the recognition that the Scott and Mulkey project just across the street really was done in a more comprehensive way. And so I hear Commissioner Hamby saying that he really wants to have those conversations, and those are not going to be easy conversations. They're going to be difficult ones, but I think they'll be more conclusive conversations that probably will have a commercial component in them, given the 20,000 plus vehicles a day going down Epps Bridge. But there probably is a series of other product types that can be integrated into this plan. And like Commissioner Bell, I hate to see anything go across the county line, but when I see it go here, I want to see it go here in as thorough and complete a way as possible, considering those other properties to the north and potentially even the other corners.
You bet. Sorry, Mike.
No, that's fine.
Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor. I certainly understand the need to protect the neighborhood, and I know we had something like this happen over in Green Acres, the shopping mall coming in, and a lot of people, still carry that as a sore spot because they're looking at the back of a strip mall. I think it's important to point out the gentleman that got up and talked about buying his house. He knew going in, one of the 8 residents back there knew going in that there was a possibility of commercial development, but the others didn't necessarily. I mean, they've been there long enough that the road has expanded because of decisions either we made or Planning Commission made, or code allowed, or whatever. And so they didn't really sign up for that, and that concerns me a little bit. I'm not happy about the driveway in Kirkwood. I explained to the developers that I would be more amenable to, approving this if we had all the ingress and egress on Epps Ridge Parkway. I was told that wasn't possible. I'm concerned about, it is a quiet street. I drove down it a couple of weeks ago. I'm concerned that, their habits of being able to turn left out of that neighborhood to go, either to Epps Bridge or down Timothy, that's going to be impacted now because this use requires a right out only. And, I grew up in Athens, and I remember seeing the piecemeal approach that happened on Atlanta Highway, and now we're looking at spending millions of dollars to address that. That's a huge concern. I mean, we have an opportunity to fix this now, and maybe we should have done it. The commission should have addressed it 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't done, but we have an opportunity to do that now. And I don't necessarily think that a bank is a bad thing for that area. I think there needs to be a more comprehensive look at that node, if you will, and determine what will work the best, both for the residents and the businesses. So.
Anybody else before I get back to Mike? Mr. Hamby?
I think Commissioner.
Ms. Wright.
Can I get some clarification? I'm hearing different things about the traffic pattern in Kirkwood Drive. Can somebody straighten that out? Because it explained to me that traffic, you can still turn right into Kirkwood and you could still turn left out of Kirkwood onto Timothy with this proposal.
The driveway, the access for the bank is a left turn only onto Kirkwood. It will be signed and designed in a manner to discourage right turns to loop back around directly to Epps Bridge Parkway.
Gotcha. But it's not interfering with the choice when you're at the at the stop sign at Kirkwood and Timothy. You still can go
either way,
as you do now. And it's right in and right out only on Timothy. Is that accurate? Into the proposed bank?
Into the bank.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I was under the impression that it was right out at Timothy, right, when you are at the intersection of Kirkwood and Timothy. It was my impression that they were going to put up some rubber barriers there or something to make it, or a small little median or something. Okay.
That's at the commercial exit, not the exit of Kirkwood onto Timothy, I believe.
Can he explain?
Mr. Williams,
Oh,
can you come and clarify that for us, please?
Sure, Madam Mayor. I guess I was a little confused by Mr. Hamby's comment that about modifying the Kirkwood entrance onto Timothy. That's not changing at all. It's a right in, right out into the project off of Timothy Road. Then we're designing our driveway out of the project onto Kirkwood in such a manner to discourage as much as possible any right-hand turn back down Kirkwood. But you'll be able to come out of the bank, make a left on the Kirkwood, and then still make a right or a left on a Timothy, or make a right or a left into Kirkwood at any time. There's no modification at the actual Kirkwood-Timothy intersection at all.
Thank you, that's the clarification I was looking for.
Thank
Because I was hearing different things, and that clarifies it for me.
Thank you.
Mike, before you speak, Mr. Harrod.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just a very brief comment, but it sounds like what's being described is very similar, or precisely the same, actually, as the exit from the bank on the corner of Barnett Shoals and Greencrest, and that was designed to encourage people only to be able to turn left and to not come into the neighborhood, but of course, people run over the curb and turn right into the neighborhood, so it may discourage, but it doesn't necessarily stop.
Mr. Hamby.
Jerry, did you want to say something? Okay, I do want to, there's a couple more points I want to bring up, and this is something that actually is going to be related to our next agenda item, and that's affordable housing. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about, I'm sure will come up, is the desire to have some affordable housing associated with that project in some form or fashion at some point in time. And what I would suggest here is we heard about some of the prices for single families that are along Kirkwood and in Swanson Jones and in St. Ives. I mean, this is workforce retiree housing, and so if we're doing things absent a plan, then we'll be taking away in one area of affordable housing and trying to give to another area. But this is good existing affordable housing that we have there, and so I want us to be mindful of that and cautious about that and so forth. So, what it does get down to is this. I mean, we have it's the impact. It's not. I know we keep talking about the bank, but it's not about just a bank. It's about where this corridor is going, and this is a pivotal moment for the corridor, and we could either pivot to doing it the right way or pivot into doing it the way that Atlanta Highway does. And we know where that's gotten us. It's gotten us having to spend a lot of money, as Commissioner Dickerson has pointed out. But we could also pivot toward making sure that the neighborhood is protected. And from that standpoint, and y'all, I think part of our job too is we don't, as a warrior, warrior. I was on the phone with my dad over here, and my mom was at the doctor, and she's asked the doctor if she has cancer, and my dad's going, "You don't have cancer, but if we don't have something in the Hamby family, if you don't have something to worry about, you'll find something to worry about." So that's my point I'm trying to make. And as somebody who is a warrior, I recognize it in other people, and I don't like it. And I when people have been in these homes for years, and they're having to worry about the next. This is the emotional part, in case you haven't realized that. But when they're having to worry about what's going in next door to them, then that's going to bother me, and I hope it bothers you too. And we can lessen that worry for them if we do a plan. I mean, if it is recognized that this may be a commercial activity area at some point in time, but let's do it like I keep arguing. Let's do it right. I actually had a gentleman who lives in the neighborhood who called me from the hospital the other night, and he was having something done, and I texted Commissioner Wright about this. And, when people, and Ms. Hughes spoke about having to worry about her family, and then now this, and zoning is supposed to protect us from that worry. And I understand that, people have a right to come to us to zone, a property, but all I'm asking for is let's make sure it's done the right way so that the citizens around there are engaged and we can find how this corridor is going to evolve over the next 20 years. Let's keep looking 20 years down the road instead of 1 or 2 years down the road. So I'm trying to figure out, what I'd like to do. My intent is to ask for, in this motion, some sort of scope of services that could be done from our staff, and it may be our staff doesn't have the time to do a study, which is fine. I want the study done quick too, and if we have to hire out to do it, I think that's something we ought to look for in doing that. I mean, and not to hold things up, but also to make sure that the neighbors are engaged and the businesses are engaged and everybody's clients are engaged. So I'm trying to figure this out, and maybe our attorney can help me. How can I give direction to staff as part of this motion?
I'm not sure that you can give direction to staff to do an area-wide study as a part of this rezoning application.
Okay.
I don't think that's, I think that's beyond the scope of this item.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I do recognize that we just delayed the 2 corridor studies that we've had on the table. Would it be possible, in conjunction with that, to request a scope of services and a cost assessment of this corridor in addition to those 2?
Of course.
When that comes back to us.
Mr. Gertz, it can, but what I think Mr. Behrman's saying is it's not within the scope of this.
Not
to
within
add-
this zoning item,
Yeah.
but I'm asking when that comes back to us. Can we say, in addition to funding these 2 corridor studies, we would also like to request a scope of services for an EPS corridor study?
Did you want to speak, Mr. Sims?
The project that we're looking at here, its request is for a community, a commercial neighborhood zoning. Across the street in the property that is zoned is commercial office, which has the most intense use, the commercial office or the commercial neighborhood?
I mean, they're a little different in terms of uses. Commercial neighborhood will allow some retail that commercial office will not. A little larger retail, but it still limits it to 10,000 square feet, where commercial office allows some limited at 2,500. That's really probably the biggest difference. Restaurants are permitted in CN and not in CO. But generally, the commercial office classification is considered a more restrictive, just maybe by one step, a more restrictive designation than commercial neighborhood.
So technically, if we, like you said, a restaurant could have gone on this corner, right?
Under the CN zoning. Now, this has a binding plan associated with it that really limits the use if it were approved.
If it was a CN, just straight out it, but if
Yes, if
we'd
it
been able
were
to put, you'd have had a nice little restaurant sitting here with a whole lot of people, a whole lot of traffic coming in and out.
If it were zoned straight
If it was
CN,
on
that's
straight.
correct, yes.
Yeah, and like I said, Ms. Dickerson mentioned, probably this might have been even more palatable had the entrance has been able to come out onto the Uxbridge Road and eliminate Timothy Road altogether and even exiting out to the Kirkwood. Why was that not a possibility? I know I'd see where we have stormwater in that particular area where it would have probably been an exit out onto the Uxbridge Road.
I was not involved in a lot of those discussions, but it may have been a distance and proximity to intersection in terms of the restriction there at that point.
And again, like I said, we just heard that, that they are willing to spend a little more money to actually grade it down to basically be compatible with what they have across the street. Is that not correct?
And that's the first I've heard of that was this evening.
That's right.
Yeah, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that that the entrance and out onto Epsbridge was not possible because right in front of that is the deceleration lane, and that you can't have entrance and exit apron and ramp for the configuration of the lane that's right there in that front part. I believe that's part of it, so it doesn't matter what might go in there that's not residential, they would not be allowed to have that coming and going from there because of that.
I don't know. Mr. Handy.
I don't want to monopolize the time here, but it is important. It's important to the neighborhoods, and it's important to all of us. I recognize that, this corridor is. And I will say this, part of the questions that Commissioner Wright's brought up and Commissioner Sims has brought up is all the more reason for a study to make sure that this is being done right, and from that standpoint. And I'll say this about binding site plans, and I know this is a binding site plan, and that's helpful, but we've had binding site plans that have come back before. Just because it's binding doesn't mean it can't be changed. It could always be changed through this body. We recently changed some of the St. Joseph's. That's a plan development. That's a binding site plan. So that's changed there. So there are mechanisms to change things from that standpoint. So.
Any further discussion?
Unless y'all want me to keep talking.
Well, we need a motion unless unless y'all.
I'm going to try to. What I'd like to do is make sure the intent is known, that to attach it to something coming to us next month for the RFP, so that we can make sure that a scope of services is done for this area and to determine what those costs are associated with it, and make sure that the commitment is there to. I'm not making it part of this motion, but I just want to really state it very clearly that that's an important part of this, to make sure that we're looking beyond the impact of a bank and making sure that the impact of the whole corridor is situated that's good for the residents around there and good for the traffic and for the businesses for that standpoint.
Mike, whatever happens with this vote, I think that needs to happen.
Right. Well,
and it needs to be incorporated into
it needs to
that
happen.
study.
It needs to happen before we get started, because that's the important component of it. You know, this is the pivotal moment. That's what I'm talking about, the pivoting of all of this. So I'm going to make a motion.
I'm just trying to assure you that I will include it in that study.
Right. But so I'm going to make a motion to deny the request.
Have a motion for
I'll second.
Have a motion and second for denial. Let's do a roll call vote, Ms. Bratton.
Hamby?
Yes.
Bale?
No.
Harrod?
Yes.
Dickerson?
Yes.
Sims?
No.
Gertz?
Yes.
Link?
Yes.
Wright?
No.
Bailey?
No.
Neesmith?
Yes.
6 yes, 4 no.
Motion denied.
So the motion to deny has passed. So, and I want to assure everybody here that will be a part of that RFP when we start discussing it again for the corridors. We should have already done it. Now we need to get busy and do it. Okay. Would anyone like to speak to item number 15?
Yeah, get them to line up.
I'm sorry. I've got the 10-minute ones first. Yeah. Yeah. If anybody needs, I was going to say, take a quick break while we're clearing. Commissioners, if y'all want to take a quick break while people clearing out, feel free to.
Yeah, and have a break, and then when they ask them to line up.
Yeah.
Some of those other people, less inclined to stand, if that's okay. Can I borrow your key? Borrow your key to that.
Of course. If I can find it. Well, I mean, I think when we get to the end of the meeting, we'll ask people to line up. I'm not sure about. One of the things that I'm thinking.
Yes.
At our agenda setting meeting, because it's so difficult
To get it all
to,
here.
to try to do it on this decision night, Yeah. Could someone please close the doors to cut down the noise? Yeah. Well, can you close the doors as you go out? Folks, let's please quiet down so we can get on with the next part of the agenda. We're moving on to item number 15. And as before, we'll deal with just this one item. We'll have public input, then we'll come behind the rail for discussion and decision. And we had someone sign up with the 10 minutes section, and Mr. Carl Nichols and Stephanie Leathers are going to share the 10 minutes. Mr. Nichols.
Good evening, distinguished mayor and commission. My name's Carl Nichols, and I live at 850 Beaver Dam Road, Winterville, Georgia, 30683. I've been a resident of Athens-Clarke County for over 50 years, and for the last 45 years have operated and owned Nichols Land and Investment Company. I've also been involved in numerous other community activities like the YWCO, the bank boards, hospital boards, and other things. And I say this not in a boastful way. I say it as a way of saying that I care about my community and I care what happens, and I'm participating in other things besides the real estate industry. Throughout my work experience, I've visited and studied many communities like Athens, and I've never found one that I would want to live in. The reason being, nobody else has the medical facilities that Athens has. We have two great hospitals here. We have a unique culture, and we're convenient to driving to the mountains in 2 hours, to the beach in 4 hours, if you drive fast enough, and to the world's leading airport in an hour and a half. The project that's being proposed tonight is about change. Over time, I've seen lots of change in Athens, some good, some not so good. When I first arrived in Athens, the Gaines School Road was 2 lanes. The intersection of Gaines School and Lexington Road was a cotton field. And so now, if you go to Gaines School and Lexington Road, you've got all kinds of retail there that's serving the east side of our community. Our government's been consolidated, and so the thought of urban and rural is no longer. It's all Athens-Clarke County. One of the best changes came when Athens Classic Center was built. There was nothing like the excitement generated when the 1996 Olympic torch came down Washington Street. I mean, it was so many people there, and it was just fantastic. The Classic Center brings visitors downtown. The food and entertainment business has flourished, and thereby adding to the density of the downtown area. From Thomas Street to Oconee Street to the river has been a concentrated area of large residential structures to house a large student population at the University of Georgia. I guess the Board of Regents found out that they didn't have to spend the money, that they could let private enterprise spend the money to do those big housing projects. Also, to support the downtown and the Classic Center, we have the Press Place building and and 2 new hotels that have just come into play there for our downtown area. In the real estate business, there's a term called highest and best use for a property or a vacant piece of land. The development business over the last 20 years gives us a positive economic engine for Athens-Clarke County. There's very little vacant land not owned by private individuals anymore in downtown Athens, especially in this area between Thomas Street and the river. The university and the government owns the balance of it. The parcel you're looking at tonight to rezone is under 1.7 acres, very small piece of land. It's currently vacant. 2 sides of it are commercial district, and it's current zoned RM2. It cannot be utilized for its highest and best use. With the zoning, it can support approximately 30% of the density that can be attained with a rezone. The county staff has reported there's adequate water, sewer, fire protection in place, and that with other minor traffic signal timing devices, the traffic is certainly not an issue. The property zone RM2 is not currently included in the moratorium. Moratorium was something that the Planning Commission really had a problem with, but this property is not in the moratorium area. It is rezoned. If it's rezoned, it will then be affected by the moratorium. That's fine with us because it's going to take 6 to 8 months to do construction drawings and things like that to plan this project, to finalize the plans for it, that we didn't want to have to spend that kind of money until we knew that the project could actually be built. The project request will change the density to the property so that it can be utilized in its highest and best use. The project's designed for 123 condominium units for sale for individual ownerships and 17,640 square feet of commercial leasable space, which will primarily be Class A office and possibly an upscale restaurant. There's currently no Class A office available in downtown Athens at the moment. Athens is my home and my community, and I care much about the future. I've done renovations in this particular area of this property, that being the Athens Manufacturing Company. Most of you over a certain age will remember that as O'Malley's. And the Hudson Oil Building, which received accolades from the Historic Preservation of the Urban Land Institute. The project is, in my vision, is a long-term viability for this Athens community. The property will be marketed primarily to retirees who want to settle in Athens, Georgia. Athens is a very vibrant community with cultural events at the Classic Center, the university, as well as sporting events and learning opportunities at UGA, and it is for balancing the population in downtown Athens. Retirees bring a wealth of experience for volunteering, for mentoring, and for being positive, stable influence on the younger generation. They're not so, don't be calling them old folks. This population of baby boomers are very active people. They walk, they ride bicycles, they travel, they explore. They're also a large part of the nation's coming population. I'm not going to admit the age, but we're getting older every day. And this group is, there's a lot of us that was born after 1944. In addition, the new Firefly Trail will be a much appreciated asset for this community. The other asset for this building, which has not been emphasized nearly enough, is the office space available. Athens has an opportunity to bring some of the best talent in the fast-growing technology field. I look at the talent house in the Press Place building like Roundsphere, and it will boggle your mind at what these young entrepreneurs can do. They are truly the 21st century in every aspect, from riding their bikes to the office to working with Amazon and Google and those types of company. There will be, in my estimation, more than 100 sustainable jobs, good jobs in this office space in this facility. You commissioners may have taken notice of other positive aspects noted by the staff, and that there's some things next to the stream that were put there probably 15 or 20 years ago. It shouldn't have been put there when we were cleaning up our streets and burying stuff. And that ecological part of this property is going to be cleaned up. Whether we admit it or not, the University of Georgia and the unified government of Athens-Clarke County, not necessarily the University of Georgia, because that's not what we're talking about, but the unified government of Athens-Clarke County is big business, and we must be cognizant of where the funds are coming from to pay for all of the community programs, the operational budget of the county, for the well-being of the longevity of our community. It is the estimate that this building will bring a substantial amount of tax dollars to add to the funding needed for the programs and the things that we need to make sure that we have a viable community. One of the bicycle folks are people who want to move here called me and said, I want to know, am I going to have bicycle racks in the basement of this building? I said, of course, if you want bicycle racks, we'll put them there for you. But anyhow, this project also is very consistent with the recommendations of the Rosser report that you as Clarke County Commissioners authorized to be done. At this time, I'm going to have Stephanie Leathers give you a report of what the marketing scheme of this property is.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Mayor and Commission, thank you for
Did he do 10 minutes?
having me. Thank you, Carl. My name is Stephanie Leathers. I reside at 120 Dogwood Lane. I am a real...
Stephanie, before you start,
Yes,
just a
ma'am.
minute. I was thinking that was a long 5 minutes with Carl.
Oh.
But we're going to go ahead and let you do 3 minutes.
Yes, that's what I was
'cause he's-
expecting.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you, ma'am. At any rate, I'm a real estate broker with Chastain, Jenkins, and Leathers here in Athens. I was born here. I'm a resident of Athens long time, lived here my adult life. I handled the majority of the sales of residential condos in downtown Athens since 2000. And to that end, I have watched our market change so dramatically over the last, 10 to 15 years. In the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen an addition of 4,500, I think, new bedrooms for student apartments in downtown Athens. That's a lot. And we haven't seen any new construction of residential, true residential, livable condominiums in downtown Athens. And I mention that because what I'm seeing with this project and what I hope it's going to create is a real balance. I think that we have a unique opportunity to finally have some real adult living in downtown Athens. We get a lot of news reports. We've gotten 55 different top stories from magazines like Garden and Gun, Southern Living, Forbes, MSN, all saying we're such a great place to retire, yet these folks then call me and I don't really have anything to show them. They don't really want a home. They don't really want to have that responsibility. They're rather downsized. They want to live the last 2 quarters of their life essentially in a place that they love. Either they grew up here or went to school here, fell in love here, had kids here, children or grandchildren went to school here, or they just heard about us in the press and they think, wow, Athens sounds so great. And then they call me and they say, well, where can we live? And I don't have anything to show them. Today, there is one condo available for sale in downtown Athens, what I call walkable, truly walkable, that you could also occupy right away. There are others for sale, but they're all leased through July of 2018 or even 2019, because we know that there's a housing shortage in downtown. So these folks are looking for somewhere to live. I think this is a great opportunity to bring that mix into downtown, hopefully help us balance things, welcome people, create some southern hospitality. It's a great location. Carl's a great developer. He does what he says. I think it's exciting. I hope you do too.
Thank you, Ms. Leathers.
Thank you.
All right. Livable for whom? So I'm Adam Lassola at 188 Northview Drive, and I'm here to speak to the proposed Mitchell Street rezone and development on behalf of the 1,075 members of Athens for Everyone. Other members will be speaking in more detail, because they know more than I do, to some of the myriad reasons that this development is a bad idea, but I'll speak to what we've decided collectively. Since this proposed rezoning came to public attention, our members have been reacting strongly to it, urging that our organization take a firm stance against it. In fact, this opposition has been without exception, with not a single member weighing in that they thought the commission should approve this rezone. The reasons are myriad. The existence of a downtown moratorium put in place to put a halt to this kind of development, the effect on housing prices, the scale of the proposal, traffic, aesthetics, the character of our community, the disgust that the mayor and commission would move on this while remaining inactive on the pressing need to implement policy to achieve access, to increase access to housing that most of us can actually afford, the kind of balance we really want in our community. But the reasons all point in the same direction. Now, our members make up a significant chunk of the locally engaged population in every one of your districts, and we want you to vote no. And we're joined by many other community members here tonight, similarly opposed to this giveaway to those who already have more than enough. Finally, the Planning Commission, who you all appointed and whose job consists of weighing in on proposals such as this, voted 6-1 to recommend that y'all vote no as well. I hope you'll also respect that they are taking their job seriously and doing it well. I want to be clear that our position is not only that rezoning for this development is a bad idea. We also ask earnestly and hopefully that the mayor and commission begin taking strong action to the end of realizing the goal of affordable housing for all. We want to be a community that suits the needs of all of our residents and that gives special attention to those facing the greatest obstacles, including the 38% of us living in poverty. That goal of a community where housing is affordable for all, where no one goes unhoused and no one has to pay half or more of their income in rent, will be difficult to achieve. We certainly recognize that, but it's not impossible and it's not optional. Let's work together as a community and make affordable housing for all a reality. The proposed rezoning and development on Mitchell Street is a big step in the wrong direction. To those of you who do vote no tonight, on behalf of our members, I thank you ahead of time.
Thank you, Adam. Please, folks, let's not have demonstrations, because if we do, we won't get through this night. We've got a lot of people that want to speak, and they deserve your quiet respect.
Hi, I'm Paula Loniak, and I live in Oglethorpe County. Flagpole had an article about that proposed development of Mitchell Street, which will create yet another high-rise building downtown. My understanding is that these condos prices will be out of reach for many Athens residents. I'm baffled and appalled at the opinions and comments of some of our commissioners. I've been told that Commissioner Gertz has since changed his opinion since the Flagpole article. Yay, thank you. But there's a couple of other commissioners that are quoted in the article, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong about these, but they're what were written. Commissioner Neesmith, you commented that compared to the Mark and Sanford Stadium, the development will be to scale. We, the citizens of Athens-Clarke County, don't like the Mark and other high-rise monstrosities that have been popping up into downtown. The idea that we can bring adults into town who can walk into town and live here is appealing, and it's something we need. What we need is affordable housing, which keeps getting ignored by the people we elected to office. I strongly believe that this development will be priced out of range for many full-time residents of Athens. Rather, these expensive condos will be bought by wealthy Atlantans who will have a home to stay in on football weekends. It's not appealing to me to have these visitors come every weekend and being catered to. Downtown is mostly bars and clothing shops geared to UGA students. I'll bet the occupants of this development will not be walking around downtown unless they want to get drunk and shop with UGA students. And Commissioner Sims, you commented that Athens is one of the best places to retire, and I think that's great. And therefore, people from places in the country with higher costs of living will appreciate that these condos would be relatively inexpensive to them. I don't even know how to address that mindset. What about some affordable housing for the people who already live here, who've made Athens this great town that it is today? Do you recommend turning our backs on them in order to attract wealthy retirees? In that case, those retirees will depend on services provided by the residents of Athens who will be unable to afford to live in Athens. With the pace at which downtown is changing, the retirees attracted to Athens won't enjoy the actual Athens since it was ruined by out-of-control development. I'm discouraged and disgusted that several of our public servants have such apparent tunnel vision and who continue to ignore the fact that the workforce housing study proved that Athens definitely needs more affordable housing for the workforce, the people who make Athens run. And I would like to thank Commissioner Link for pointing out that people in the community hate this stuff, the high-rise student housing that's just all over the place, out of control. So I thank you, and I hope you won't allow this to be built.
Thank you, Dr. Loniak.
My name is Irami Ose Frimpong. I live at 475 Brookwood Drive. And I think the idea that this is going to go to wealthy retirees is amusing or either naive. I don't know which one. It's going to be students or the occasional former Hope alumni who now save their money to buy this condo for the football games. And that is what it is. And it might even be good for the city and the county. But let's not pretend that it's going to be retirees who live there. I just don't see that being the case. And since there's no real accountability mechanism that's built in for that, I think it's just stories either you tell yourselves or you tell us that's just not going to map up to reality. And when it doesn't map up to reality, like, I don't know who to blame for that. Do blame Carl? Or I don't know. And I actually don't think it's the worst thing in the world for the city. Wealthy retirees, not wealthy retirees, wealthy students, and also alumni, if they want a place to live in town, they should get a place to live in town. So I'm actually not averse to building something I don't feel is particularly my aesthetic, but it's also not in my price range, so that's fine. However, we can talk about affordable housing and aesthetics, but my primary concern is jobs and getting the black workforce injected into the building trades. Now, the city and the county has an attested history of land use and development priorities that have been detrimental to building black wealth on a generational level. Now, here is an opportunity for a county commission to let it be known that this project would be much more attractive with not only more pretty artistic renderings, but a worked out plan to include 30% of contractors, subcontractors, and employees to be made up of Black Athens. And if you have a hard time finding those contractors, I know quite a few reasonably priced consultants who could help you find those black contractors in the city. And I know you have money for the contractors because I participated in Envision Athens, and that was contracting money that I don't think was spent very well. So I know we have money. If we have money to spend money consulting for that project, we have money to find consultants in Athens to hook up someone like Carl with some of my colleagues who actually would match Carl with black contractors and subcontractors so that black workers can get those jobs at both points of entry so that they can become building trade entrepreneurs 10, 20, 30 years down the road, and also get jobs today. I think we've negligent to our duties to our black residents insofar as we do not try to redress the locking them out of Athens' economy for so long.
Excuse me, sir, your time is up.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, everyone. My name is Netra Rajendran, and I'm a second-year student at UGA. And as a business major, and I reside at 175 International Drive. As a business major, I can appreciate and understand the value of expansion and development, but I also value the importance of the triple bottom line principle that demonstrates the relationships between social, environmental, and economic implications. This property is encircled by a stream and will be built upon valuable green space. Also, about 25% of the property is in a 100-year-old floodplain. Floodplains are crucial in allowing water to flow back into the ecosystems and replenish natural aquifers and groundwater. By constructing on a floodplain, you are making the land virtually impermeable and more susceptible to flooding, something that we should consider in light of the recent events in Houston. Not to mention, we should also preserve the aesthetic of downtown and the historic, amazing vibe that it has. And I believe that we should keep the classic city classic and not build this property. So I urge you guys to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. My name is Kelly Clifton, and I reside at 115 Colleton Drive. When I first heard of the proposed development slated for Mitchell Street, I was optimistic regarding the chance for strategic development in Athens and hopeful that this project would be considered as an opportunity for a way to support economic development and increased housing in light of the county's challenges with affordable housing and jobs creation. After hearing the commentary from the last commission meeting along with the recommendations from the Planning Commission, I am disappointed that the majority of the commission that the members of the commission are still in favor of this development without demonstrable thought, in-depth analysis, and transparent strategic negotiations being made in support of the larger city and county. As the proposal stands, this development will be a luxury condominium in support of people who already have a mountain home, already have a beach house, already have an Atlanta house, but want to come to Athens, not necessarily live and invest for the long term. While it is clear that our community is in dire need of homes priced to support affordable housing, it is also clear that this development and this condominium is an apples to oranges comparison, as affordable housing has not been a clear priority of this commission. What's more disappointing and baffling is that collaborative planning and strategic thought has not been demonstrated by key departments of our county government. Given that the developer is proposing this to be a senior housing or retirement community, one would hope that stakeholders such as the Council on Aging, Athens Housing Authority, and other interest groups would also have the opportunity to weigh in on the planning process. More importantly, if the commission is determined to bring this type of development to Athens, the commission should be thoughtful and strategic enough to ensure that Athens gets more than tax credits and a new eyesore. Developments of this sort are a prime opportunity to encourage supplier diversity, incentivize inclusionary zoning for below market rate housing, and more importantly, implement a mechanism to fund a housing production trust fund to offset the lack of affordable housing in Athens. I won't spend more time, but I've sent all of you additional questions that seem not to have been answered, including, has an independent traffic study been done to complete this project? Will there be age restrictions on buyers since it's considered retirement living? Will traffic calming measures be implemented on Mitchell Street and the downtown area? More importantly, this commission and government seems to love feasibility studies and studies after time. We just went through Envision Athens, and I don't recall senior housing being one of the top recommendations coming out of it, but affordable housing certainly has been. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clifton.
Mayor and Commissioners, my name is John Fortune. I reside at 105 Three Oaks Drive, and I'm the president of our local homeowners association, the Kenny Ridge Community Association. I come before you regarding this proposed rezoning. I've reviewed the Planning Commission's report and the developer's documents. I've previously worked in an office as a manager where they did land planning and architecture, and I think the Planning Commission was correct in assessing that this is not an appropriate use or an appropriate rezoning. It's really quite a stretch to rezone this to commercial downtown, and as representing our neighborhood community association, we want to make certain that the quality of life for all of Athens, not just our neighborhood, is looked at from a long view perspective. Another point, or points not made by the Planning Commission, but I do think need to be addressed in really all major developments in this city, is we need to address sustainability in buildings. And the developer has made no reference to trying to qualify for any of the sustainable building standards, such as the...
Over 9 years, 10 years now. And I've trusted y'all to, not put this kind of developments up, and certainly haven't put my trust in the right place at some times, but, excuse me. But anyways, the moratorium I thought was a symbol of moving forward, moving past that, and putting your understanding in the hands of the community members who certainly don't want this kind of development. And you didn't take that on. So even though you can rezone without, and still have the moratorium in place, I still think, like the Planning Commission said, that the moratorium is an important symbol. The planning period that the moratorium puts in place for us is important to keep in mind. Last thing that I want to point out is the idea that retirees are going to stay here and live here and form a good life here and ride their bikes here. A lot of the people in this room are baby boomers. I know a lot of baby boomers. I've not met one person who wants to retire to a condo. I don't believe that that's something, I just don't believe that's true. Office space is not lacking in Athens. We have plenty of other mixed residential use, mixed commercial residential uses with office space in their basements, i.e. the Mark, i.e. Wherever Mama's Bird granola, that's still open if anybody wants to take up that office space. So those are my points, and I hope you really consider my opinion and the opinion of a lot of the students that I represent.
Thank you, Ms. Shea.
Hello, Mayor. I'm Robert Foster at 350 Pine Forest Drive. My wife and I have been in Athens for 4 years. We bought a house near the mayor because we'd like to die in Athens.
Oh, my goodness.
So, and we chose not to go to Coney County. We chose to buy here and have our tax dollars go into Coney County. That was a serious decision on our part. And as much as I appreciate Carl's honesty that big business runs this city, I bought my house in this county on purpose so that my tax dollars would go to county people. And I don't like hearing that big business is going to outvote my decision to buy a house in this county so that my wife and I could die here. That kind of pisses me off. Sorry. Not really sorry, but anyway. I'm here because several of my African American friends asked me if I would come and advocate on their behalf for affordable housing. And I'm here because they asked me to. As far as I'm concerned, right, I mean, we're considering this rezoning for another development in the downtown area. But the question is really, where is the plan for low-income housing, for affordable housing that is clear on what we plan to do going forward in the future? You know, it's like we continue to have these questions about rezoning. Right? I've been to several commission meetings now on rezoning, but where is the actual vision for affordable housing in Athens-Clarke County? And until that happens, I think all these sort of changing and rezonings is presenting sort of a problem because we continue to listen to certain voices and not to others. And I just think that as full county commissioners, not representing just one person or one interest, there needs to be a plan for affordable housing. There's the workforce housing document, and Vision Athens wants us to consider affordable housing seriously, and so I think that's something for us to listen to. A couple of things that came to my mind as I was looking over all the different notes that were sent to me. One of them is that the City Planning Commission is running alongside another group that's been brought together on equity, inclusion, and diversity. But where is the representation from low-income and moderate-income housing folks on the City Planning Commission? Maybe we wouldn't be making these decisions if some people who are on the City Planning Commission were also low-income housing folks, so that their voice would be heard at the first table, not at the final table, when most votes have already been decided. The second thing that was concerning is several of us were at the report on gangs and youth development, and a whole discussion about after-school programming and all that sort of stuff that made it into the newspaper. But maybe if we decided in a community like Nellie B that we were going to do some real good affordable housing in that area, we wouldn't just be talking about whether we had after-school programs and such. We'd be talking about the revitalization of a whole community, and we got to get the whole picture in our mind and not just the one. Thanks for listening to me for today.
Thank you, Robert. And I hope wanting to die in Athens has nothing to do with living near me.
Good evening, Mayor Commission. Broderick Flanagan, 215 Gresham Street, Athens, Georgia. I do, too, want to speak to the opposition of the Mitchell Street project. Just saying, like, every time we as a community put profits, over the needs of the people, we continue to undermine the very people that we talk about when we bring up the poverty rate. When we fail to be inclusive on the front end of economic development or any other government initiative, we continue to perpetuate the disparities in our community, whether it's in housing stability or unemployment or any other area or issue. One may argue that this type of benign or intentional neglect can attribute to our robust nonprofit sector, most of which are well-intentioned and valued. After economic development deals have been made, benefactors, give to their favorite charities, which oftentimes do not go to the grassroots organizations that are in the trenches. And even more so, it does not move the needle on the root of the issue. It is also dangerous to assume that a nonprofit can address the issues of poverty, especially when we have opportunities to create affordable housing and minority business contracts if we include those stipulations in projects like the Mitchell Street development and others, and the many others before this one. Also, if you're hoping that this development can attract, wealthy retirees, supposedly, to offer assistance in the form of volunteerism to our many nonprofits, if that is the case, I think we're working backwards. Are we saying that we want wealthy people, many of whom probably won't even spend a quarter of their time in Athens each year, to be afforded a luxury condo for leisurely visits? I understand we're currently exploring measures to bring inclusionary zoning and maybe an affordable housing funding mechanism to create opportunities to address the need. So why not start now by voting down this proposal until we can get some things in place to address the needs of workforce housing population right here in Athens-Clarke County? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flanagan.
Hi, my name is Alice Hilton. I live at 870 North Chase Street. I was born in Athens. I grew up here. Mr. Sims, you taught me social studies in 5th grade. And I'm gonna just digress for a moment. I've been thinking a lot about the old oak tree that used to be on the hill in 5 Points where Hotchins is now. I think most of you have probably been in Athens long enough to remember that. It was a huge tree. It was beautiful. It was old. And my friends and I, when we were in high school, we used to go eat ice cream under it after school. That tree was really beloved by a lot of the community. And I remember one day in my junior year of high school, I woke up and it was gone. And I think that has been on my mind a lot lately because this development proposal feels like a similar situation in which this really life-shaping decision is in the hands of potentially non-representative forces in our community. This isn't the kind of development that's going to carry us forward into a livable future. It's not affordable, it's not dense, it has more parking spaces than it has bedrooms. It's intended for wealthy people who don't live here, who have homes elsewhere. Or more likely, it seems like it's going to end up with wealthy families buying condos for their kids. And it's hard to feel like being in this situation again of feeling powerless and feeling like I lack control in a community that I love and that I want to stay in. And so from what I understand, this decision is really going to hinge on Commissioner Herod and Commissioner Hamby and Commissioner Sims on how you vote. And so I want you to know that I and a lot of people in this room and a lot of people in the Athens community are really counting on you. So thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
My name is Charlie Maddox. I live at 115 Avalon Drive, Athens, and I come to speak on behalf of this. As I sat and I listened to how people felt and what they thought and all of that, the one thing that resonated most, the mayor and commission, you're not in the affordable housing business. For 20-something years working as a commissioner with the Athens Housing Authority, making decisions about where the least and the left out could make, we were able to make those, but not because of anything that was contributed here. It was done so by the federal government paying the cost. I asked a friend of mine, what is affordable housing? Affordable housing is what you can afford. If you can't afford it, you can't go and tell Georgia Power, I live in affordable housing. You can't go and tell somebody, I need you to build this cheaper. You know, to everybody behind the rail, our business community, no matter what you like them or don't like them, they're not in the business of providing affordable housing. They're in the business of making business. Behind the rail, when you get money, when you get tax revenue, then you can do that. We have a division of our government that deals with that, and they work hand in hand with Athens Housing Authority. Somebody said, look what we did out there at Jack R. Wells. We did that through ingenuity and through the help of the private sector. A private sector landlord thought it not wrong to partner with us that we can do that. That's what it's going to take. And you can not rezone this, you can rezone. It's not gonna bring you into affordable housing. I spent 8 years with Habitat. I spent 20 on the board. I spent 20 years with the Athens Housing Authority on the board. I worked with every group in this town I've spent 35 years working for the Labor Department, helping people to find jobs. Let me tell you what it's gonna take. Government is not gonna be, people have to do it. And by restricting what business does, you're limiting this. I think the tax thing goes from like 40,000 or 50 or 70 to 600 something. With $600,000, what more can this government do to address the affordable housing issue? What more can you do? You go to the people that got the money. That's where you get the money to build affordable housing. Nobody's gonna come. A good friend of mine always says at the end, somebody's got to pay. And believe me, until we start taking this serious, that business is not going to pay it. It's not their obligation. It's not their responsibility, no matter how civic-minded they are. And again, behind there, you are not just a proponent for affordable housing. You're the proponent for water and sewer. You're the proponents for safety. You're the proponent for all of this, and you take this into consideration. And I weary when I hear folks talk about rich folk. I want to be a rich folk. I want to be one of them. And I don't want to put a stride on them. And to say that this development is not taking care of the lead stuff and all that, we have prime developers here, and they're looking at every aspect to make this less costly to them, and that makes it better for all of us. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good evening. My name's Jane McPherson, and I'm fortunate to live at 554 Boulevard in Athens. I am also a professor of social work at UGA, and as such, I am very lucky to walk to work. One of the reasons that my family bought and wanted to come to Athens was the human scale of this city. So I walked to work from Boulevard, and I walked down in Mitchell. And currently, when I say I walk down it, I mean that I literally walk down the center of it, because there are no sidewalks currently on the street. That is, there's a railroad crossing. At the top, there's half a sidewalk. Then you come to railroad and then there's no sidewalk. And then there's half a sidewalk, except the condominiums that currently live there or exist there. That's where they keep their trash and recycle bins 7 days a week. So this afternoon, I walked up the street with one of my graduate students, and we walked in the middle of the street. And as we walked in the middle of the street, we looked around at all the other people walking in the middle of the street, and then we pushed aside to let the cars go by. So I would really encourage you to listen to the Planning Commission and reject this rezoning. To the extent that the piece of property will be developed, I would certainly hope that you listen to the voices of those who are calling for affordable housing, but also that you just think about what it's like to be a human being on Mitchell Street, because it is really difficult to walk there currently, as opposed to many of the streets in downtown, or in fact all the others that I know of. This is a really narrow area. It already feels very restricted. Even those two-story condominiums on one side feel kind of big and looming, so that one little open spot feels like, a breath of fresh air, which is a cliche, which it is, and it may not last, but whatever decisions you make for that space, think about the human beings who are going to move up and down that street. I don't understand how more traffic and all of those parking spaces are really going to be reasonably accommodated there. I can't imagine what's going to happen to all the UGA students and others of us who use that as a thoroughfare. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson.
Good evening. My name is Mary P. Bagby. I live at 1442 East Broad Street, Athens, Georgia, 30601. And I came tonight to bring my motto. I'm not trying to take what's yours. I'm just trying to keep what's mine. And I feel like that if the mayor and commission allow the zoning to be changed, if 40 units are supposed to be there, that's zoned for it. But you can allow big spenders to come in and put 256 condos there. So you're breaking rules for money. But now, I called the mayor 13 years ago, who was Miss Heidi Davidson, and I asked her about a rumor that a highway was going to be ran through where my property is. She wouldn't deny it or acknowledge it. She asked me, who told me? I called Mayor Denson when she was on Tim Bryant's radio program about a couple of years ago, and I asked her the same question. And she said she heard the rumor. They're going to run a highway through. So I don't think you should make zoning laws that's going to give people the advantage to take advantage of people that have lesser. Now, Ms. Ovita Thorne just said that the people that are suffering from poverty are not here. So I don't know what the poverty income is, so if it's $12,000 or less, I assure you that somebody that's suffering from poverty is here tonight. And Mr. Charlie Maddox is talking about all the commissions and things that he's on. And of course, he has so much money and he lives on Avalon, and so he can afford to say that the food bank is giving scraps to the people. Now, my understanding of scraps is when you've eaten and you have hogs and dogs and you throw out the food that you couldn't eat. I understand that was scraps. And they was talking about the baby boomers. So if 70 is a baby boomer, then I'm here tonight. But I'm asking the mayor and council to vote no, because you're going to take the little people's property for easement and eminent domain for big business. There's a lot over on the other side of 1442 East Broad Street. And I was told last week that some developers have gotten it for $1 million. Right across from where, if you walk out of my front door and walk straight through, you would end up on that property or you would end up on the Loop 29. So I'm asking you to allow me to keep what's mine. Do not change zoning laws for the rich and famous. Don't break the law. And if you're going to break the law, then you need to allow me to add one room to the back of my house that I tried to ask for 25 years, and I was told that because my driveway is too close to the house next door, I could not add a room to my house.
Miss Baby,
Now,
I'm sorry, your time is up.
well, if you're going to change zoning laws, then you need to allow me to build a room onto the back of my house, because you got students and rich white people adding houses. They're driving through driveways that you share each driveway, and they're actually building houses in their backyards. How come I can't have a room onto my house that I bought? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Abigail West, 149 Morton Avenue, and I support a lot of really good points that have been made today, and I just wanted to add just a little bit more what I've been thinking about in regards to this issue. So I work with the University of Georgia Office of Sustainability, and one of our amazing staff, we brought up this issue the other day in one of our meetings, and this is Tira Byers, she described it as a critical sustainability issue, and I think that's a really good way to look at it, because it is development. It is a project that's going to remove a small strip of forest. It's going to be built on top of a stream and involve putting that section underground again. It's also raising housing costs, and it's doing little to support the community. But on the other hand, as some have said, it does offer housing within walking distance of downtown. And evidently, people will be able to store their bikes there as well and support that sort of community. But okay, that sounds good in theory, but the everyday needs of people without cars are not currently met downtown. That's just the way it is. And so I think that when I think about it that way, it just kind of brings me to the point that there needs to be more planning if there is going to be more development there, and that is a piece of land that is a good piece of land that could be used for good projects, it needs to be planned ahead. And you guys said earlier this year, not very long ago, you put a moratorium. This commission voted to put a moratorium on this kind of development in favor of looking more closely at planning. And that hasn't been done yet, and we're not there yet. If we want to support the kind of Athens we hope this can become in the future, and honestly just support the community that we currently already have, I'm pretty sure we can all agree that that's the first most important thing. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. West.
Hi, my name is Karina Gallagher. I reside at 325 Bray Street. And I just wanted to say, let's look at the current issues plaguing our community. And then I just want to leave you with 3 questions. So let's make Athens great. How does building this development decrease our growing poverty rate? Let's make Athens inclusive. How many of our current retirement age residents will be able to move into this kind of development? And my 3rd question is just, let's be green. How much green space do we have left in Athens? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher.
Hello. My name is Ursula McPherson-Vitkus, and I currently rent the space at 535 Willow Street, but my permanent residence, I am proud to say, is 554 Boulevard, where I enjoy spending all of my holidays with my mother, Jane McPherson, who already spoke, and my stepfather, John Jefferson, who will be speaking in a moment. We are an involved family. I am a senior at UGA whose 2 parents live in Athens-Clarke County. My parents are currently redoing our downstairs so that my grandparents can live there when they decide to do so. I mention this because this is an example of an environment that a retiree may want to live in. I mention this also because the stretch of street in question is not the kind of place that my grandparents would ever want to inhabit as it is. I am not saying it's uninhabitable, as I very much enjoyed spending all of last year living right next door at Waterford Place as a 21-year-old college student who drunkenly walked on the street in question back and forth from downtown on many nights, hooting and hollering in the way that we drunk, obnoxious Georgia fans are wont to do. I, now at a sage 21 and a half years old, have moved to a quieter location outside of the immediate downtown area, ironically, to escape the sounds of construction, of the Mark. But I can't imagine the Mark's presence will have improved the litter and the noise and the car accidents I used to hear during both the day and the night, every day while living at Waterford. On some twisted version of a bright side, I imagine this will not be a problem for anyone, for much of anyone, as this building will likely stand empty most of the time. I am certain it will be brimming with wealthy Atlantans on football weekends. But otherwise, it will serve as a hulking, empty reminder of the priorities of this council. Not to the people here in this room and the people we are attempting to speak for, but for the people who want to grow the luxury housing landmark properties boom that I have been watching unfold. That is in your control today. It is my hope, and I think it is yours as well, to try to represent us. That in the name of Athens for everyone, for those in need of affordable housing or even access to food security, please vote no. When it comes time for me to vote here in Athens, Georgia, and I will, as will my mother and father, I will remember if you listened today and if you kept your promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Or Ursula, I'm sorry.
Good evening. My name is Tommy Valentine. I live at 395 Cleveland Avenue. I want to thank the Mayor and Commission for allowing me to speak today. I want to talk just for a moment about purpose, intention, and priorities. In the poem The Second Coming by Yeats, there's a line that says, things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. And I know that's very grandiose to talk in a zoning discussion, but I bring it up because the purpose of government, the reason, as I know all of you worked so hard to earn this office and to take this office and to serve honorably, is to hold back the tide of anarchy and to give our lives some direction. And we're only given so much time and space to do that. I'm happy to have grown up in Athens since I was 5 years old, and I've been very happy to see some of the development that's happened. I've watched Athens in some places grow more beautiful, although as someone who used to also have ice cream under that tree, I miss the Hodgson's tree and 50-cent cones. But there is limited space, and this week I was reminded of that when a 2012 flagpole article started to make the rounds on social media again, written by someone I go to church with, about the history of Allenville in Athens and how that community, which used to stretch over East Campus Road and was a proud black community, was slowly eroded. I know that there's this perception that government has nothing to do with housing or zoning or how things grow, but that hasn't proven to be the case. Athens over time has grown poorer and more segregated, oftentimes with the direct complicity of the government. I'm not saying that that's the intention anyone ever wakes up with, but I am saying that often that's the results of the actions and decisions made. Decisions like tonight, which might seem very mundane, often produce the sweep and the direction of a city. And there's really only so much ground in Athens. I used to live in Farmers. I know this lot very well. I've done my hooting and hollering, I'm sure, as well. But we need to be careful where places, what we do with places like this. I hear a lot about economic development in these discussions, but I wonder for who. Athens has some of the lowest unemployment in the state. We don't need more jobs that aren't living wages, living wage paid jobs. So when I hear that it's going to create more hospitality jobs or retail jobs, those aren't sustainable living wage jobs, and we already are at 5% unemployment, which according to economic development theory is about ideal. So this idea that just bringing in jobs helps us when we're already employed but poor, I'm just not sure how that helps. So thank you so much for hearing me out. I hope you'll make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Hello, my name is John Jefferson. I am one of the hordes living at, or possibly at some future point living at 554 Boulevard, and I too am here to speak against the rezoning proposal. Other people besides me have noted how dramatically overscaled this project is, this proposed project is for that small site. As someone who frequently drives down that very narrow street, someone who frequently drives Doherty and Thomas Streets, I can say, even though I'm a relative newcomer to Athens, that I am astonished and appalled by the loomingness of the large new developments, how incredibly overscaled and disrespectful of their context they are. They do not engage in dialogue with the town of Athens. They create their own islands of opulence, and I think to rezone so that one more of these islands of opulence can be put in a place it's clearly unsuited for is, as virtually everyone else tonight has said, is a bad idea. I also think that would be really ironic, given the vote on the prior agenda item tonight, when discussion of spot zoning and sort of piecemeal zoning seemed to have a real impact with this commission. The idea that this project, which would have far more impact if it's approved, if the rezoning is approved, than the possibility of building a bank on that corner that was discussed earlier. I think that would be an incredibly ironic decision for this body to make. So I add my voice to the large chorus of voices calling for you to vote no on rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jefferson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. My name is Michael Smith. We're over on Bryan Street, 147 Bryan Street. I think the developer has some great ideas about putting retirees and young people together, retirees living and the young people being the entrepreneurs and establishing relationships on the same property. And also, I think he has a great reputation and has lived here in Athens for many years, but there's no planned development attached to the zoning change. So really, everything that we're saying is conjecture. Everything that we're envisioning is a guess. And so I wanted to talk about affordable housing. There's actually a government definition, many government definitions of affordable housing, but there's also a free market definition, and it's a false narrative that this is an affordable price point. If you're comparing to major metropolitan areas like New York and Seattle and LA, you'll see very expensive price tags on these exact same properties. But Athens is blessed because we have the University of Georgia here. It's a flagship university, so you can compare prices all over the country in similar towns. We're University of Iowa, University of Michigan, University of Nebraska, University of Alabama, and University of Arkansas. I would say there's probably 30 or 40 university flagship towns where the price point would be less. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if we're marketing to people from out of town and they're not paying rent, many of these people are going to get bank loans, and I don't think they're going to be getting them at First American Bank or Madison Bank or any other local bank. And the income that's going to be produced out of it, because I'm sure that many of them will be rentals, is going to be passive income. It's not work income. And so if you put, the narrative that it's a good price point, but they have great ideas, but we don't have any evidence that it's actually going to unfold this way. All we're going to have is a zoning change, like he said, that changes it to highest to best use, still on the free market. So my idea is that I know they've been here once before. I think the community could work with them to put entrepreneurs and retirees together, but I think that they need to show us a planned development before we approve a zoning change.
Thank you, Michael.
Hello, I'm Devin Clower, 375 and a half Holman Avenue. I would like to speak against the rezoning of this specific property as a downtown business owner. I've been watching over the last few years all of the increase of the extremely large scale housing that has come downtown already and has drastically changed the landscape of our beloved downtown. And growth is inevitable, but I ask all of us to think of it in a much more comprehensive way and think proactively on what we want our downtown to look like. With the existing moratorium in the downtown district, I cannot support the idea of rezoning this property into a large-scale development when it's not zoned that way currently, and we also don't need any more large-scale developments downtown. I think it's an interesting concept to appeal to retirees. I have no issue with that. I think it can be done on a much smaller scale and tie much more into this property if this is where it's going to go. And I just think that we need to use this time to really think about what we want our downtown, as well as all of Athens, to look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clower.
Good evening, Mayor and the Commission. My name is Deborah Gonzalez. I reside at 212 McHenry Drive in Athens. It was interesting for me to listen today to all of the commentary said by the residences, and two things that I'd like to bring up from that. Number one, I advise a lot of businesses, and businesses are made up of people. This separation that we do of business and community does not have to be. There is a big trend right now of benefit businesses and social businesses, just like Zombie Donuts down the street, where they make sure that a portion of their profits will go to a nonprofit or community organization. So it is a myth to think that a business cannot do well by doing good. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is I think that this has given an opportunity for Athens to be a role model in terms of cities and the way that the government works with its community members. we are looking for answers of sustainability, not just of this project, but the other ones that have been brought up for rezoning. Commissioner Link has brought up the idea that doing these one by one may not be, in the long run, the most efficient way of us using the resources that we have. I've been to Oconee. I've heard their concerns about growth being out of balance with the quality of life, or being out of balance even with the competencies that they have within their government. And so I ask this commission to really look at this as an opportunity to step back, and instead of piecemealing these rezoning petitions as they come in, put them into a comprehensive plan so that, yes, Athens-Clarke #1 will be competitive with Oconee in bringing businesses as well as keeping businesses here without having to reinvent the wheel every time that it does. And two, that it does so while keeping in mind the very people that we are representing, many of them who are marginalized, many of them who may not have an opportunity to speak, many of them who are struggling every day as they live and love this city that they live in and raise their families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Hey, my name is Katie Orton. I live at 145.5 Mill Street. I'm actually subleasing. I work up the street at a coffee shop. I've lived here a couple of years. I actually grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and I moved away from Chapel Hill kind of because a lot of this was happening. I was trying to take, a couple of years to decide what to study. I was interested in affordable housing, in politics, and all of this stuff. And all that I saw in Chapel Hill was more high-rises for students. And I grew up there, and so I had a lot of the same concerns as people have spoke about tonight. Favorite places kind of disappearing and feeling kind of kicked out of downtown just because it's not welcoming to the people who actually live here. It just looks like more of the same. So I found myself here. I thought that, this is a pretty great place. I figured out how to plug in. There's some great organizations. I'm able to talk to a lot of people, especially because of my job. Working at a coffee shop, I see people every day who really live here. I think it's really unique, and I think that y'all's jobs are really cool. Like, I think it'd be really cool to be able to sit in y'all's seats and make decisions about shaping a town, especially one where there's a lot of really, really sweet people. I mean, living in the South, I think, is a really special opportunity because people are so open and so friendly, and it's, here I am standing and talking to all of you guys, and you're looking me in the eye, and I love it. And so I thank you for doing what you're doing. And again, I wonder how much listening is happening, because I'm really talking to a lot of people, and I'm hearing again and again the affordable housing thing. I'm trying to figure out, where I can afford to live, and I know that I have a lot of options. I'm not originally from here. My parents don't live here. I just found it, and I think it's a cool place to live. I think that y'all have an opportunity to make it a really cool place by, having a progressive foot forward and not taking steps in the wrong direction. Like Adam was saying, this is really a step in a kind of weird wrong direction. It's wrong on so many levels of environmentalism and, just making just multiple decisions. And how many times can we say affordable housing in one night? But there's a lot of reasons to vote against it, and I don't really see the reason to vote for it. I don't see what makes it cool or different, or how this is going to get us on a list of best places to live. I lived in Asheville for a while, and that was on a lot of lists of coolest places to live, and I'm still here, and I just don't see how this is a step, in making Athens a better place to live for, the residents who currently live here and who are currently asking you to vote no and to put better things in its place. So anyways, thank you for listening, and thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, Ms. Horton.
Hi, I'm Ellen Walker. I live at 580 Belvoir Heights in Normaltown. I wrote to all of you about this issue, and I got an answer. Thank you, Commissioner Wright, for speaking to my concerns. So I won't go over that again, and I've communicated a lot with my representative, Commissioner Bailey, and he's always been very responsive, and I appreciate that. Just two things quickly. I keep hearing over and over that there's this notion that Athens-Clarke County is not business friendly, And I find that really perplexing. I'm not sure what that means. Is it because we have zoning, because we have laws that protect the citizens? Is it because we expect that businesses pay fees for licenses that allow them to make enormous profits? So I'm just really baffled by that, and I think it's really disturbing to hear veiled and not so veiled threats that people are going to go put their business in Oconee County or move across the river. And I personally think, well, good riddance. If you want to go to Oconee, go. It's not as if we don't have businesses here, and it's not as if we don't have long-term businesses here who are committed and good citizens and willing to pay their taxes and all that. So that still confuses me. The other thing is, there's all this talk now about Athens being such a great place to retire to, but I agree with other people who've said we need to make sure that Athens is a good place for people who live here. And I sat next to a woman at a community meeting who was looking very lost and kind of confused, and it was after the election, and everybody was going to all these meetings and getting involved in stuff. And I asked her, why she looked like she was probably about my age. And she said that she and her husband had read in a magazine that Athens was a great place to retire to. So they bought a house several years ago, and they rented it out. And then when they were finally ready to retire, they came here, and she said, I had no idea the problems that Athens has. I had no idea that there were this many poor people here. I had no idea that there were, the problems. And I thought that was very interesting. And my final point is just that we need to think about why people want to live here. I think the reason that people want to live here are all the people that have spoken tonight, all the people in this room. And that's what makes Athens unique.
Thank you, Ms. Walker.
My name is Frank Pittman. I'm with Williams & Associates. I'm actually an Oconee County resident, but I have been working a little bit on this project, Mr. Carl. I just wanted to come up and clear up a lot of things that have been said over the last hour by numerous people that was not accurate information. One person mentioned that there was floodplain on the property and would they be building in the floodplain. There is no floodplain on this property, nor would they be building in floodplain if there was. Somebody questioned whether a traffic study had been done. A traffic study was done. It was reviewed by staff. It was accepted by staff. There was comments about LEED certification and solar panels, which sounds great, but in the same conversation, we talk about affordable housing, but LEED certification and solar panels are pretty expensive, and that makes the project even more expensive. I think that the developers have looked into maybe trying to do LEED certification, and they will continue to look towards that. Somebody mentioned wanting a piece of the pie. These guys currently spend $18,000 a year in property tax on this property. Once it's developed, the estimate is $700,000 a year. I think that's a pretty big piece of the pie. There's been a lot of talk about affordable housing, and I think that people are getting confused as to what we're doing here. Rezone and affordable housing are not the same things. Mr. Maddox spoke about affordable housing, and I would argue with anybody here that he's done more for affordable housing in Athens-Clarke County than anybody in this room. People need to listen to what he's saying on that. There was conversation about a creek being paved over. The creek will not be paved over. There's a buffer on the creek. The creek will actually be cleaned up. Today, there's a bunch of stuff leaking into the creek from stuff buried on the property that these guys are going to have to pay over $300,000 worth of cleanup to clean up. So the creek will be in better shape than it is today. There was a quote when the moratorium was issued. There was a quote from one of the commissioners here who said that one of the reasons why the moratorium was put in place, because we need diversity downtown. We need something other than students. This is exactly what these guys are trying to do here. You know, there was a girl who mentioned staggering down the middle of the road. These guys are obviously going to be putting in sidewalks along their frontage like any other project in Athens-Clarke County. I don't necessarily want to speak for them, but I would estimate they would probably be willing to put in more sidewalks than even in front of their project to help out and make it a more walkable community. There was mention about, somebody said that there was talk about hospitality or retail jobs. I mean, what I heard Mr. Carl say was they were estimating high-tech jobs in Class A office space, which is not hospitality and retail jobs. Somebody said they want this to be a planned development. It is a planned development. That's exactly what's being proposed is a planned development. They have to build exactly what's shown here. Sorry.
Frank, tell me your last name. I'm sorry.
Pittman, P-I-T-T-M-A-N.
Okay.
Russell Edwards, 400 Ducking Springs Road. My wife and I have just recently, we're now renovating a downtown building, and we put solar panels on the roof, a 12 kilowatt system, and it's going to pay for itself in 6 years. So I think all of this new development coming downtown, we've really missed an opportunity to require some sort of sustainable building design. And we're counting on people just to kind of do it on their own, willy-nilly. Climate change is a fact. And there are simple things that could be done to help curb the effects of climate change. Athens could be a leader. Athens could be a leader in Georgia by putting in place very small requirements for developers. It makes economic sense. It's great for business. It's going to attract jobs. It's going to attract industry. It's going to send a positive message to the world that Athens, Georgia knows the right way forward. So I think this project is just indicative of another one coming down the pike where we've missed an opportunity to help business make a decision that would be great for the community. And I hope that perhaps Mr. Nichols explores using solar panels. The prices have gone down dramatically, and the math makes sense. And if you could make some sustainable measures on this building, you might find that you'll get some more support. I echo the concerns of other folks. It'd be great. We need an inclusionary zoning program in this community. For large-scale residential developments, why not set aside just a small percentage so that folks can have an affordable place to live? It's good for business. These folks work downtown in our service industry. They need a place to live. Let's do what's right for business by helping create opportunities for these folks too. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
My name is Vicki Tavernier. I live at 495 Snapfinger Drive. I'm exhausted, so I know y'all are. I just have to say, you cannot undevelop. You can't undevelop. Don't you think that those people in Houston wished that they could have undeveloped 20 years ago when they let it get so out of control? I'm a teacher. You get too many people in one room, and nothing good happens. We're about to do this to this town if we let this development in. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. It doesn't matter what kind of jobs you need. None of that. All of that is superfluous. You get too many people in one small space, and things go bad. Traffic goes bad. Snarl goes bad. People just get grumpy. I really, really hope y'all think this through, because there are just some things that money cannot buy. And I know that $700,000 ticket sounds real good, and you're going to go to bed tonight, and somebody's going to be ticked at you. Somebody. But wouldn't you like to go to bed knowing you had kept the heart and soul of Athens the way it should be and not sold it out to yet one more developer. There's nobody who has a job called the undeveloper, is there? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tavener.
Hi. My name is Carmen Kwan. I live at 130 Grady Avenue. I moved to Athens a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, and I fell in love with this town. I didn't think I would. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, went to UNC Chapel Hill. I loved Chapel Hill. Didn't think that there would be a town that would be comparable, but Athens has far surpassed my time in Chapel Hill, and it's the reason why I decided to stay here and go to UGA for graduate school. And the person who just commented said that Athens has heart and soul, and it's true. Athens has a lot of heart, and Athens has a lot of soul, and it's the people who currently live here who make Athens what it is. I was appalled to find out that Athens has a poverty rate of 38%. That blew me away because when I first moved here, I didn't see it. I am very lucky. I'm financially independent from my parents, but I was able to secure a job right after college that helped me to be able to afford where I currently live. And when I realized how many people who live in Athens are in poverty, I wanted to do something about it, and so I decided to look into affordable housing. And I know that has been repeated over and over and over again, but I truly believe that is one of the solutions to make Athens inclusive for everyone, for every single person, whether you're rich or poor, young, old, retirees. Everyone can live here if there's a housing for everybody. And so I biked across the country because I believed in affordable housing. I raised money for affordable housing with this nonprofit called Bike and Build. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. It's something that I'm going back to school for. And I implore you all to vote against rezoning this property on Mitchell Street. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Madam Mayor, my name is Ed Allen. I have lived in Athens, Georgia for 65 years. And my family has lived here. My mother was a school teacher. We were poor. And she was a good woman. There's nobody here loves Athens more than I do. Nobody. I've always tried to be honest about Athens. This project has been reflected completely wrong by the people who just talked to you. This project was designed by Carl Nichols and others to bring in vibrant people into the community to balance out an overpopulace of students, which are damaging, quite frankly, the vibrant business community of downtown Athens. Not intentionally. They're not doing it to hurt Athens. But Athens has turned into a great big bar and a place for students to live. And it's sad and it's destroying our community. And we need to get real about that. Now, what is going on here and what we're trying to do is bring in retirees. Most of these people, in fact, know a lot about the university, and they want to get involved with the university and bring vibrance back to Athens. They want to balance our populace down here in downtown Athens. And I'm not speaking to you as an attorney. I'm speaking to you as somebody that knows a little bit about this. I represented the Housing Authority. I know a lot about affordable housing. This is not a place for affordable housing. If you do affordable housing, it'll go directly back to the student population whose parents can then afford it. This is to balance out what's been done at the Mark and other places and give Athens a chance, like during the day, early evening, for people to walk the streets, to mix the streets. That's what this does. And you wonder, after the last meeting, I asked for the Rosser report. This is the report commissioned by you to ask questions about what's going on in downtown. This is an independent group you hired. And guess what it says? It says you need this project. We're not going to violate any environmental law. We've had a traffic study. We've done everything good citizens do. Everything to bring in a good project and to balance out what's going on in our community. Time's up.
Thank you, Ed. Anyone else wish to speak to item 15?
My name is Ashley Knott, and I live at 184 Child Street. I am not here to say any negative things to you as the commission, but I want to respond. I think that that man just mentioned that vibrancy needs to be restored in this town. If it's restored, it needs to come back from the community. It's not going to be done by bringing more people from the outside. The vibrancy is not restored here, needs to be restored because people are hungry. People don't have access to jobs or any of the other resources that a lot of other people might. And we need to take care of the people that are here. You have a population without housing, and you're saying that the vibrancy needs to be restored by getting retirees, supposedly, to come in and spend their money at our businesses. He also mentioned that the town needs to be mixed again, and I think that's exactly right. What we see on the streets are people from higher income families and people of privilege who get to walk the streets and get to be comfortable, not only financially, but also socially, in the businesses that make up downtown Athens and other places that people frequent. And I think that if we want to mix a community in a healthy way and restore balance, we need to mix it race and economic status needs to be represented on our streets. And by bringing in people from the outside to think that that's what's going to save our town, I think that everyone, if y'all are digesting that, then maybe you might come to the same conclusions that I have. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think that I understand that y'all have tried your hardest to do what you want to do as a developer, and you've been trying to take care of this community. But what good citizens do when making big decisions like this is listen to the community that they're affecting. And if you heard all of the people in here tonight, I think it's pretty clear what the majority of us think. And the constituency that y'all are representing as our commissioners are not these retirees that don't live here. Your constituency is in this room. And those are the people that you're supposed to represent. And yes, your developer, maybe you are also representing him. But yeah, at the same, you need to figure out what we need to do for this town and not just for the developers anymore, because we've done too much to satisfy their needs, and it's not helping anybody else. So yeah, please vote no on this agenda item.
Okay, anybody else before we come back?
I sat here and listened to all this tonight, and I'm going to tell you something. When I went to high school...
Tell us your name and address, please.
Excuse me. My name is Stephen Hill, and my address is 1885 Lake Warner Road in Gainesville. I have 2 students here in Athens. One just graduated, actually. We have a home here in Athens. And I have a daughter that's now doing a finished year here. I worked my way through high school. I worked my way through college. I played football at Gainesville High School, and I was able to work at night, and if Coach Gruen knew I was working, I'd probably been in trouble. I went to Auburn, and I'm going to tell you, in architecture school at Auburn. I was the first project, the first. Did solar research and natural systems. Our company started all of these things that you're talking about tonight, sustainability, way before everybody else did. Our projects are the most economically operated projects built today. We've done the studies, we've looked at it, and we know what we're doing. I've lived, when I got out of college, I renovated an old farmhouse, shotgun, and lived in it. I know what this is like. And when the economy went in the toilet with Jimmy Carter, I lived in a motorhome, a GMC motorhome. I know what it's like to live like that. I'm gonna tell you, right now, I'm currently working with a developer. We hear what you're saying for sustainable housing. We want to create pieces of property where we can build houses that you're talking about that are built on the site with big tent, basically tent areas, so we can build what you're looking for. He's got a piece of property right now that's east of Athens, and we're looking at doing that with that piece of property. I know what you're dealing with. I've been there. I know how hard it is to make an end meet. I know when I get to the end of the month and it goes, I can't pay this bill. Somehow God always got there and got me through it. But I'm going to tell you, when you take a development like this on this piece of property, we've spent a lot of money, and we're going to spend a lot of money to clean it up. Every project I do, we're proud of. And we're going to be proud of this project. We're going to clean up this stream. We've got 30 feet plus of debris that's been stored on this property for years. You can't develop it without cleaning it up, and to clean it up costs money. This property will generate a building. When they keep saying elderly, it's an adult. This is for adults. This is for adults to live in from this community. There are people coming to me from this community. I'm going to tell you, I come here all the time because I'd rather come here than Atlanta any day. That have come to me and say, I've got a $700,000 house out here, and when I go on vacation, I come back and there's a tree limb across the deck. I want a place in Athens. So we're not talking about people coming from outside. We're talking about people who are retiring here now that love this community just like I do. I went to Auburn. I have 2 children who went to Georgia. I'm going to have a place in this community because I love it. And I'm going to make sure it's going to develop properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Anyone else before we come behind the rail? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Berryman, so I won't forget, will you read the ordinance for us?
Yes, ma'am, there are 2. The first is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to amending the official future development map of Athens-Clarke County by changing the designation of a parcel of land comprising approximately 1.7 acres located at 155 Mitchell Street from residential mixed use to downtown and for other purposes. The next is an ordinance to amend the Code of Athens-Clarke County, Georgia with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprising approximately 1.7 acres located at 155 Mitchell Street from RM2 mixed density residential to CD, RIV, PD, commercial downtown, river downtown, design area, planned development, and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Berryman. And this is in Ms. Wright's district. Would you like to open the discussion?
Well, I don't want to go first, but it is my honor, after everybody coming here and expressing their opinions and their passions. I don't think there's anybody behind the rail that isn't as passionate about Athens. But I'm not here to debate who loves Athens most, because everybody in this room does, or we wouldn't be here. I wish for a blended community. People talk about Athens for everybody, but I'm learning that there's a list of people that Athens isn't for with this project. And I just don't like that. I just want us to look at this as being a community that's blended and welcoming, and that we're not putting a wall around the county about who can come in and who can't. And I just want us to lighten up on that part of it. And then I want to start going through some things that are about this project. You guys have read the material, you've talked among yourself, you have your opinions, and I just want to straighten some things out about it. And I hope the other commissioners can also chime in on what I stumble on or what I don't get correct. A lot of the stuff has been straightened out. This is a planned development that's being presented before us. There's going to be an increase in the sidewalk shade trees, and this is between the sidewalk and the lawn. This property is 45 feet back from the curb, of a new sidewalk that is desperately needed in the area, and there's only 2 feet of right-of-way. So the additional space for the sidewalk is part of what the developers have planned in their donation or contribution. There's going to be what is considered, and I didn't have it written and investigated enough to know what the current proper riparian buffer is and the density of the native plants that have to go on that. But this project is going to follow up with that after the construction debris that gets cleaned up. The creek is not going to be covered. It's going to be opened up and healthier than it's been before. Another item that I'm working with the developer to do is finish the sidewalk on William Street. He's willing to pay for the sidewalk. That would be from Oconee Street to where the sidewalk is on the UGA side, but that's going to take some while, and we've got time to work that out, but he's wanting to connect that sidewalk that is a worn path from people coming into campus of that part, and that's going to give some safer connectivity to that bus stop that's there as well. This property is in the downtown tax property district. A lot of people didn't realize that. That was part of the new map, and he signed on to be included in that. This property, part of its accommodations are advantageous to people for the American Disabilities Act. Part of the waivers that they want is because of the slope of Mitchell Street, the commercial property is going to be within the front door. There's not going to be 4 different commercial property entrances. It's because of the terrain, and it's also an amenity and more appropriate for elderly navigation. And also the traffic study, that was 159 pages. The short version of that executive summary was that this would not change the level of service for the 2 traffic lights in the area, was the short version of that 159 pages. They're mitigating the construction debris. I brought that up. There's been a lot of misconceptions about the downtown health and safety study that we did and the moratorium that went with it. That was to address health and safety concerns with population for the aging infrastructure that we have in downtown, getting supplies in, getting garbage and recycling out, having a safe area in the streets. This property is not increasing any of that. It's planned properly for those types of issues that the health and safety study was to be on. It was not to be done to do a design to talk about designs of property. And this is also what came out of that study when it did talk about ways to minimize the number of student housing. They brought up some examples about the one way you do that is you don't allow renting apartments by bedroom, and you have a whole unit that a person is responsible for. These are not apartments. These aren't going to be rented by bedroom, which is the student housing aspect of it. Same with making smaller bedroom counts. This one is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath count with 10 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom counts, not mostly 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom count. And it also is not going to solve all the problems of our community. It's also not going to exasperate all the problems in our community. I think we're all very committed to affordable housing